I stood in my mother's kitchen on Christmas Eve, my cheeks stinging from her slap, watching the gift I had spent 1 year making land in the trash. My family watched in silence, accepting my humiliation as a holiday tradition. I thought I was trapped in that nightmare forever. I had no idea that in 3 weeks, a black limousine would pull up to my curb, carrying a billionaire grandmother ready to burn their world to the ground. My name is Morgan Hale, and I am 32 years old, though tonight, as I parked my battered sedan in the driveway of my parents' house, I felt closer to 100. The digital clock on the dashboard glowed 11:30, signaling the end of a 14-hour shift at Evermont City Medical Center. My scrubs still smelled faintly of antiseptic and the copper tang of dried blood from a trauma patient who had not made it, but I had sprayed enough perfume to choke a horse in a desperate attempt to mask the scent of death. I could not be late. I could not be absent. In the Hale family, attendance at Christmas Eve was not an invitation. It was a summons, and disobeying a summons from Valerie Hale was a crime punishable by emotional execution. I sat in the car for a moment, staring at the golden glow emanating from the bay windows of the 2-story colonial house in Maple Crest. It was a picture-perfect scene from the outside. Wreaths adorned every window, and icicles caught the light of the tasteful landscape illumination. Inside, I knew, was warmth, expensive wine, and the kind of laughter that sounded practiced. I reached over to the passenger seat and touched the 2 items resting there. One was a small, velvet box containing a simple silver bracelet. It was not much, perhaps $40, but the charm was a small stethoscope, a nod to the career I had fought so hard to keep, despite my mother's constant belittling. But the real gift, the one that made my heart hammer against my ribs with a mixture of pride and terror, was the heavy, leather-bound book beneath it. I had spent nearly 1 year creating it. It was a scrapbook, but calling it that felt like an insult to the sleepless nights I had poured into its pages. I had spent months secretly scanning old family documents, hunting down fading Polaroids from shoeboxes hidden in the attic, and digitally restoring water-damaged photos of my grandparents. I had written captions in calligraphy, detailing anecdotes I had overheard as a child, trying to weave a narrative of a family that loved each other. There were pages dedicated to my mother's garden, pages showing the progression of my father's hardware business before it went under, and even pages acknowledging the hard times we had survived. It was my peace offering. It was my way of saying, I see you, I value our history, and I love you despite everything. I took a deep breath, grabbed the gifts, and stepped out into the biting wind. The snow crunched under my boots as I walked to the front door. I did not have a key. My mother had changed the locks 3 years ago and never got around to giving me a new one, so I rang the bell. The door swung open, revealing the hired help for the evening, a woman named Marta, whom I had known since high school. She gave me a sympathetic smile, taking my coat. They are in the living room, Morgan, she whispered. Your mother is in a mood. When is she not? I whispered back, forcing a smile that did not reach my eyes. As I walked down the hallway, the smell of roasted prime rib and rosemary hit me, making my empty stomach turn. I had not eaten since 6 in the morning. The sound of clinking crystal and booming laughter grew louder. I stepped into the living room, and for a second, no one noticed me. Valerie Hale stood by the fireplace, holding a glass of Chardonnay. She looked impeccable in a crimson silk dress that likely cost more than my rent for 3 months. Her hair was coiffed into a stiff, perfect helmet of blonde curls. She was mid-sentence, gesturing animatedly to Aunt Linda and Uncle Bob. And of course, Valerie was saying, her voice pitching high with pride, we are just so relieved Sienna found someone who matches her ambition. The wedding is going to be the event of the season. His family owns half of the oil rigs in West Texas. You know, Sienna is going to be set for life. My sister, Sienna, sat on the plush beige sofa, looking bored and beautiful. She was 28, a corporate lawyer who had never lost a case because her father-in-law-to-be owned the firm. She twirled a diamond engagement ring the size of a grape on her finger, nodding absent-mindedly. Morgan, Aunt Linda spotted me first. Oh, honey, you look tired." The room went quiet. Valerie turned, her eyes scanning me from head to toe. She did not see her daughter, who had just spent 12 hours saving lives. She saw a stain on her perfect scenery. "You are late," Valerie said, her voice dropping a frigid few degrees. "And look at those bags under your eyes. You could have at least put on some concealer before coming to a family gathering." "I came straight from the hospital. Mom," I said, clutching the scrapbook tighter to my chest. "Merry Christmas." "Well, do not just stand there," she snapped, waving her hand dismissively toward the back of the house. "The prime rib needs carving, and the asparagus is getting cold. Marta is busy with the drinks. Go finish up in the kitchen. We have been waiting on you to eat for 1 hour." I blinked. I had prepped that prime rib 2 days ago. I had bought the roast, seasoned it, and left strict instructions on the oven temperature. I had practically catered this entire dinner before my shift even started. "I just got here," I started to say. But my father, Greg Hale, cleared his throat. "Just help your mother out, Morgan," he mumbled into his scotch glass, refusing to meet my eyes. "Do not start a scene." I swallowed the lump in my throat and went to the kitchen. For 45 minutes, I plated food, garnished potatoes, and arranged the table while the sound of laughter drifted in from the other room. They were talking about Sienna's honeymoon in the Maldives. They were talking about the new Mercedes my father wanted. No one came in to ask if I needed help. I was not the guest. I was the staff that shared their DNA. When we finally sat down to dinner, the conversation revolved entirely around the wedding. "It is going to be a legacy merger as much as a marriage," Valerie declared, cutting into the meat I had paid for. "Sienna and Chip are going to take over the business world. It is so rewarding to see your children succeed. It makes all my sacrifices worth it." She looked pointedly at me. "I heard you picked up extra shifts again, Morgan," Uncle Bob said, trying to be kind. "Saving up for something special?" "Just paying bills," I said quietly. "Maybe if you had stuck with that dermatologist track I found for you instead of wiping bottoms in the ER, you would not need to work on Christmas," Sienna said, smirking over her wine glass. "It is honest work, Sienna," I said, my grip tightening on my fork. "It is gruesome," Valerie corrected, "and it does not pay enough, clearly. Do you know how embarrassing it is when people ask why my daughter is still renting that awful apartment in Riverside Flats?" I said nothing. I focused on chewing. If I spoke, I would scream. I would scream that my awful apartment was all I could afford because I had transferred $5,000 to Valerie's account last month to cover the unexpected roof repairs on this very house. I would scream that the reason I worked extra shifts was to pay off the credit card debt she had racked up in my name when I was 22. But I stayed silent. This was the ritual. I endured. They took, and we called it family. After dinner came the gifts. We moved back to the living room. The tree was buried under a mountain of gleaming paper and satin ribbons. I watched as Sienna opened a designer handbag from our parents. I watched my father open a set of titanium golf clubs. I watched Valerie open the cashmere coat and the spa voucher I had bought for her, labeled simply, "From Greg and the girls." "Oh, Greg, it is magnificent," Valerie squealed, wrapping the coat around herself. She did not even look at me, even though she knew my father had not bought a gift for her since 1995. I had bought it. I had wrapped it. Then, Valerie reached under the tree and tossed a small, limp package toward me. It landed on the floor by my feet. "Open it," she said, checking her reflection in the mirror. I tore the paper. It was a scarf, acrylic, scratchy. The price tag was still on it. $9.99 from a discount bin. It was not even a color I wore. It was a garish neon orange. "Thank you," I whispered. "You are an adult, Morgan," Valerie said, waving a hand. "Adults do not really need gifts. It is just a token." Sienna was modeling a $3,000 handbag. I held my $10 scarf. "I have something for you." "Mom," I said, my voice trembling slightly. I reached into my large tote bag and pulled out the scrapbook. The room went quiet again. The book was heavy, substantial. I had bound it in deep red leather. embossed with the family name in gold leaf. I stood up and walked over to her, holding it out with both hands like an offering to a deity. "I made this," I said, feeling my face heat up. "It took me a while. It has everything. The photos from Grandma's old house, the letters you wrote to Dad when he was deployed, even the ticket stubs from the first movie you took me to. I wanted us to remember the good parts." Valerie took the book. She looked at it with mild suspicion, running a manicured nail over the cover. She opened it. For a moment, there was silence. She flipped the first page, then the second. I watched her face, waiting for the softening, for the teary smile, for the moment she would look at me and realize I was a good daughter. Her eyes narrowed. She stopped on a page I had titled, "The Building Years." It featured a collage of photos from when we lived in a small duplex. Before the money, before the pretension, there was a photo of Valerie with messy hair, laughing while painting a wall, and next to it, a scanned copy of an old medical bill I had paid off for her 2 years ago when she had that minor surgery and refused to use her savings. I had included it as a symbol of how we supported each other. "What is this?" Valerie asked. Her voice was low, dangerous. "It is the history." "Mom," I said, stepping closer. "It shows how far we have come. Look, that is the receipt from—" "I know what it is," she hissed. She flipped another page, landing on a photo of her and Dad arguing in the background of a birthday party. A candid shot I had thought showed raw honesty, captioned, "Real love survives the storms." "You think this is a gift?" Valerie stood up, the book open in her hands. Her face was flushing a deep, angry red. "You put in pictures of me looking like a beggar? You put in copies of bills? What is wrong with you?" "No, Mom. It is about resilience," I stammered. "It is about how we—" "It is about you humiliating me," she shouted. The sudden volume made Uncle Bob jump. "You bring this trash into my house? You want to show everyone that your mother used to be poor? You want to wave these bills around to prove what? That you gave me money? Is that it? You want a medal?" "I never said that," I pleaded, tears pricking my eyes. "I just wanted to preserve the truth." "The truth?" Valerie scoffed. "The truth is you have always been jealous. Jealous of your sister. Jealous of our happiness. You dwell on the ugly things because you are ugly inside, Morgan." She turned and marched toward the large, ornate fireplace. Next to it stood a large brass wastebasket meant for wrapping paper. "Mom, please, do not," I said, reaching out. She did not hesitate. With a look of absolute disgust, she threw the leather-bound book into the trash. It landed with a heavy, sickening thud among the crumpled wrapping paper. "Is this trash what you call a gift?" she spat. The room froze. I felt like the air had been sucked out of my lungs. 1 year of work, 1 year of trying to prove I loved her, gone. I moved. It was instinct. I lunged toward the trash can to retrieve it. "Do not you dare touch that garbage!" Valerie shrieked. As I bent down, her hand lashed out. Crack. The sound was louder than the slap itself. Her palm connected with my cheekbone with a force that snapped my head to the side. My vision blurred for a second. The sting was immediate, hot and sharp, spreading across my face like fire. I stood there, bent over the trash can, my hand hovering over the book. I touched my cheek. It was throbbing. I was 32 years old, and my mother had just slapped me in front of my father, my sister, and my relatives. "You ungrateful little wretch," Valerie breathed, her chest heaving. She loomed over me, her eyes wide and manic. "You come in here with your long face, ruining our night, throwing your little victim complex in my face. I gave you life. I gave you everything. And this is how you repay me? By mocking me?" I slowly straightened up. My ear was ringing. I looked around the room. Aunt Linda was studying the pattern on the rug. Uncle Bob was drinking his scotch in one long gulp. I looked at Sienna, my sister, who I had tutored, who I had protected from bullies, whose wedding deposit I had paid 3 months ago. "Honestly, Morgan," Sienna mumbled, picking at a loose thread on a cushion. "You are overreacting. You know how she gets. Why did you have to provoke her?" I looked at my father. Greg Hale sat in his armchair, the same chair he had sat in for 20 years. He looked at me for 1 second, one fleeting second of shame, before he turned his head toward the television, which was playing a silent Christmas parade. "Dad?" I whispered. He took a sip of his drink. He said nothing. Valerie was not done. She looked down and saw the small velvet box that had fallen from my bag when she slapped me. The bracelet. "And what is this?" she sneered. "Another piece of junk?" She kicked it. She did not pick it up. She kicked it with her pointed heel. The box skittered across the hardwood floor and disappeared into the darkness under the sofa. "Get out," Valerie said, pointing to the door. "If you cannot behave like a daughter who appreciates her family, then get out of my house." My cheek burned, but something else was burning inside me, deeper than the skin. It was the sudden, horrifying clarity of a truth I had been denying for decades. I was not a daughter here. I was not a person. I was a prop. I was a servant who paid for the privilege of being abused. I was a punching bag they kept around to make themselves feel powerful. I reached into the trash can. My fingers brushed against the leather cover of the scrapbook. It was stained with a smear of grease from a discarded napkin. I pulled it out. I did not say a word. I did not cry. The tears were there, trapped behind my eyes, but I would not let them fall. Not here, not for them. I turned and walked toward the hallway. "Oh, now she is doing the dramatic exit." I heard Valerie scoff behind me. "She will be back tomorrow begging for forgiveness. She always is." I grabbed my coat from the rack. I opened the heavy front door and stepped out into the night. The snow was falling harder now, thick white flakes that swirled in the biting wind. The cold air hit my burning face, stinging the skin where her hand had struck me. I clutched the ruined book to my chest, feeling the damp leather soak into my scrubs. I walked to my car, my legs shaking so hard I could barely stand. I threw the book onto the passenger seat and collapsed behind the wheel. I stared at the house one last time. The golden light still spilled from the windows, warm and inviting, a perfect lie masking the rot inside. As I started the engine, a question echoed in the silence of the car. Louder than the wind. Louder than my own heartbeat. If I disappeared tonight, if I drove this car off the bridge and vanished into the icy water, would they actually miss me? Or would they just realize, with a moment of annoyance, that there was no one left to cook the dinner and pay the bills? I put the car in reverse and backed out of the driveway, leaving the perfect house in Maple Crest behind, disappearing into the white void of the storm. My apartment in Riverside Flats was exactly as I had left it 14 hours ago, which was to say, it was a disaster. The linoleum in the entryway was peeling at the corners, curling up like dead leaves. The sink was piled high with dishes from 3 days ago because I had picked up back-to-back shifts to pay for the prime rib roast that was currently digesting in my family's stomachs. The air smelled of stale coffee and the distinct, musty dampness that came from the leaky pipe the landlord refused to fix. I locked the door behind me and leaned against it, letting the silence wash over me. It was not a peaceful silence. It was the heavy, suffocating silence of a life that had been paused while I lived for everyone else. I walked to the bathroom and flicked on the light. The fluorescent bulb flickered before buzzing to life, illuminating my face in the cracked mirror above the sink. The red mark on my left cheek was vivid, a perfect anatomy of violence. I could see the outline of her fingers. I could see where her ring had grazed the skin. My eyes were swollen. The capillaries burst from holding back tears in the car. But the crying had stopped. Now, there was only a cold, clinical numbness. It was the same feeling I got in the trauma bay when a patient flatlined and I had to switch off the emotions to document the time of death. I went to the kitchen table and swept the pile of junk mail to the floor. I retrieved my purse and dumped everything out. Receipts, pay stubs, my phone, the crumpled napkins from the drive-through dinner I had eaten alone 2 nights ago. Tonight, I was not going to sleep. Tonight, I was going to perform an autopsy, not on a body, but on my life. I sat down and opened my banking app. My hands were shaking, not from cold, but from a sudden, terrifying need to know the truth. I began to scroll. I pulled a notepad from my bag, the one I usually used for patient vitals, and started writing. I started with the last 12 months. December 15th, $500 transferred to Sienna. Memo. Emergency dress fitting. November 20th, $300 to Greg Hale. Memo. Gas and groceries. October 10th, $2,000 to Valerie Hale. Memo. Roof repair deposit. September 1st, $800. Sienna's bridal shower catering. I wrote until my hand cramped. I scrolled back through the year. Then the year before that. I dug out old shoeboxes from under my bed where I kept paper statements from years ago. I laid them out on the table like evidence in a murder trial. The total for this year alone stared up at me. $12,450. I stared at the number. $12,000? That was a down payment on a small house. That was a new car to replace the sedan that rattled when I went over 40 miles per hour. That was a vacation where I did not have to cook. My savings account balance sat in the corner of the screen. $412. I closed my eyes and the memories began to flood in. No longer hazy with the fog of filial duty, but sharp and high definition. I thought back to my teenage years. I remembered being 16 years old. My friends were going to the movies or the mall on Friday nights. I was at home, standing over the stove, stirring spaghetti sauce because Mom had a headache and Dad was working late. "You are the oldest. Morgan," Mom would say, pressing a cool cloth to her forehead. "You have to set the example. You have to sacrifice. That is what women do." I remembered when Dad's hardware business failed. I was 19. I was working 2 jobs and taking night classes. I remembered handing Dad my first significant paycheck, the money I had saved for textbooks. He had taken it without looking me in the eye, muttering about a rough patch. That rough patch had lasted 13 years. I opened my laptop. The fan whirred loudly, struggling to cool the overheating processor. I navigated to my old email account, the one I used for junk mail now, but which held the archives of my early 20s. I needed to find the scholarship letter. I found it. The acceptance letter from the nursing program at a prestigious university on the East Coast. Full ride, housing included. It was my ticket out. I remembered the day I showed it to Valerie. She had wept. Not tears of joy, but tears of devastation. "How can you leave me?" she had wailed, clutching her chest. "Your father is falling apart. I am sick with worry. If you leave, the family will collapse. You are the glue. Morgan, are you really selfish enough to abandon us for your own ambition?" So I stayed. I went to the local community college. I lived at home. I paid rent to my parents to live in the bedroom I grew up in. 2 years later, when Sienna wanted to go to law school in California, Valerie had thrown a party. She has to spread her wings. Mom had told the neighbors, beaming, "We have to let them fly." The hypocrisy tasted like bile in my throat. I picked up my phone and opened the family group chat. It was named the Hale Heart. I scrolled up, reading the messages with fresh eyes. "Mom, don't forget to make the mac and cheese for Sunday." Morgan, use the expensive cheddar. Sienna, Morgan, can you spot me for the deposit on the photographer? My bonus has not cleared yet. Dad, anyone have $50 for the club fees? Mom, Morgan, remember to pick up my dry cleaning before your shift. I scrolled for 20 minutes. I was looking for something specific. I was looking for a question. I was looking for, "How are you?" Or, "Are you tired?" Or even, "Do you have enough money for rent?" There was nothing, not one single line. I was not a member of the chat. I was a utility service they subscribed to. I thought about the way they spoke about my job. Just last month, at a barbecue, I had heard Valerie talking to a neighbor. "It is a shame Morgan never quite made it to medical school," she had whispered, shaking her head with feigned sadness. "She just did not have the drive that Sienna has, but we are proud of her for trying." I was a trauma nurse. During the pandemic, I had worn garbage bags when we ran out of protective gear. I had held phones up to the ears of dying patients so they could hear their families say goodbye. I had intubated, compressed chests, and wiped blood from the floor. I was excellent at my job. But to Valerie, I was just a failed doctor, a disappointment that could be useful if she needed someone to check her blood pressure or pay for her vanity coat. I went back to the laptop. I was looking for an old receipt for a laptop I had bought Sienna 4 years ago, trying to add it to my mental ledger, when I saw a folder in the email sidebar. Deleted items. No, that was not right. I clicked on spam. Nothing. Then I looked at a folder named Archive 2013. I clicked it. Buried among newsletters and old school notifications was a thread with a subject line that made my breath hitch. Subject: Flight to New York. Invitation. Sender: Eleanor Hale. My grandmother, the billionaire matriarch of the Hale family, the woman I had not seen since I was 10 years old, the woman Valerie told me was a cruel, cold-hearted miser who hated us because we were not rich enough. She cut us off. Morgan, Valerie had told me repeatedly, she cares about her stocks more than her grandchildren. Do not ever bother her. I opened the email. It was dated 10 years ago. My dear Morgan, the email read, I hope this finds you well. I heard you are finishing your nursing degree. I am so proud of you. I would love for you to come visit me in New York this summer. I have sent a ticket. Please let me know if the dates work. I miss you. My heart pounded against my ribs. She had reached out. She had wanted to see me. I looked at the reply. It was sent from my account, but I had never written it. Grandma. The reply read, I am very busy with school and I do not really have time for trips. Honestly, I would prefer if we kept our distance. Mom says you are judgmental, and I do not need that energy. Please do not contact me again. I gasped, the sound sharp in the empty apartment, the syntax, the tone, the specific use of the phrase judgmental energy. It was Valerie. Valerie had logged into my account. She knew my password because she demanded to have access to everything in case of emergencies. She had impersonated me. She had rejected my grandmother on my behalf. I scrolled up. There were 5 more emails over the years. Birthday wishes, graduation congratulations, a query about whether I needed help with student loans. Every single one had been blocked, deleted, or replied to with cold indifference. The last email was from 2 years ago. Morgan, I respect your wish for silence, but please know my door is open if you ever change your mind. Love, Grandma. I sat back, feeling the room spin. It was not just money. It was not just labor. Valerie had stolen people from me. She had isolated me, carefully pruning away any branch of the family tree that might offer me shelter, ensuring that I had nowhere to go but back to her kitchen, back to her abuse. Valerie needed me to be the victim so she could be the martyr. She needed me to be poor so she could feel rich. She needed me to be alone so she could own me. A cold fury began to rise in my chest. It was different from the anger I had felt in the car. That was the hot, chaotic anger of a wounded child. This was different. This was the precise, focused adrenaline of a clinician spotting a tumor. I was not crazy. I was not ungrateful. I was the host organism for a parasite. I closed the browser and minimized the banking app. I opened a fresh word processing document. The cursor blinked on the blank white page. I typed the title. Case Study, The Hale Family. I hit Enter. Subject, Morgan Hale. Status, Critical. Diagnosis, Chronic narcissistic abuse and financial exploitation. I began to type. I did not write with emotion. I wrote with data. I listed the facts. Fact 1. Valerie Hale has forged correspondence to isolate subject from extended support network. Fact 2. Greg Hale has misappropriated funds designated for education and housing for over 1 decade. Fact 3. Physical assault occurred on December 24th at 11:45 post-meridian. Witnesses. 3. I typed for hours. I detailed the emotional blackmail. I transcribed the text messages where they guilted me into paying bills. I created a timeline of every major life decision I had made that had been manipulated by Valerie's feigned illnesses or dramatic crises. I looked at the family as a system of pathology. Valerie was the pathogen. Greg was the compromised immune system that refused to fight. Sienna was the healthy tissue that was being fed nutrients at the expense of the dying organ, me. By the time the sun began to creep through the blinds, casting gray light over the peeling linoleum, I had written 20 pages. I looked at the screen. This was not a diary. This was a dossier. I remembered the email address from Eleanor Hale. Eleanor, hale@haleventures.com. I stared at it. Valerie thought she had won. She thought throwing my scrapbook in the trash was the end of the story. She thought the slap would put me back in line, just like it always had. She thought I was upstairs crying, or sleeping it off, ready to come back tomorrow with an apology and a casserole. She did not know that the daughter she struck was gone. The woman sitting in this apartment was someone else entirely. I saved the document. I named it evidence. Then, I stood up and walked to the kitchen. I opened the fridge and took out a bottle of water. I drank it in one long gulp. I was dehydrated. I needed to be hydrated for what came next. I walked back to the table and looked at the pile of bills one last time. $12,000, I said aloud to the empty room. My voice was raspy. I picked up the phone. I did not call my mother. I did not call my sister. I opened my contact list and found the number for the hospital scheduling office. It was 5 a.m. The automated system would be on. "You have reached the scheduling line," the robotic voice said. "This is Morgan Hale," I said clearly. "I am available for overtime. Put me down for every available night shift for the next 3 weeks. Holidays included." I needed money. I needed a war chest. Then, I sat back down at the computer. I opened a new email draft. I typed in the address, Eleanor, hale@haleventures.com. I hesitated. My finger hovered over the keys. What if she hated me? What if Valerie was right and the emails were fake? What if I was walking into a trap? No, the trap was the house in Maple Crest. The trap was the silence. I typed the subject line. Subject, the scrapbook in the trash. I did not write the body of the email yet. I was not ready. I needed to verify the address. I needed to know if the woman on the other end was the monster my mother described or the savior the emails suggested. I closed the laptop. I went to the window and looked out at the parking lot of Riverside Flats. My car was covered in a layer of fresh snow, looking like a white lump of coal. I was going to fix my life. I was going to stop the bleeding. And for the first time in 32 years, I was going to be the one holding the scalpel. The vibration of my phone against my thigh used to trigger a Pavlovian response of immediate anxiety. It was a conditioning ingrained in me over 3 decades. 1 buzz meant a request. 2 buzzes meant a demand. 3 buzzes meant a crisis that was almost certainly fabricated but required my wallet to solve. It was 2 days after Christmas. I was 3 hours into a 12-hour shift in the emergency department. I stepped into the supply closet, surrounded by boxes of saline and sterile gauze, and pulled out my phone. The text was from Valerie. "Dad is having palpitations. I need you to come pick him up and take him to the cardiologist. His appointment is at 2 o'clock. Do not forget to bring your card for the copay. Our insurance is acting up again." I stared at the screen. My thumb hovered over the keypad. The old Morgan. The Morgan from 3 days ago would have already been typing an apology to her charge nurse, begging for leave, and calculating how much overtime she would need to work to cover the lost wages and the doctor's bill. But the Morgan standing in the supply closet had a bruise on her cheek that was currently covered by a layer of thick foundation. That Morgan remembered the sound of a leather-bound book hitting the bottom of a trash can. I took a deep breath. I typed, "I am on shift and I cannot leave. We are short-staffed. You can call a taxi or use the Uber app I installed on your phone. Dad has his own insurance card in his wallet. I cannot pay for this today." I hit send before I could talk myself out of it. The response was immediate. It was not a ripple. It was a tsunami. "Valerie, you cannot be serious. This is your father's heart we are talking about. Are you really going to choose your little job over his life? You have no heart. Morgan, I do not know who you are anymore. Sienna. Mom is crying. Seriously? You know Dad gets anxious in taxis. Stop being so selfish and just handle it. I am in a meeting and cannot deal with this drama. Greg. Morgan, please just do what your mother wants. I do not want to upset her. My chest hurts. I looked at the message from my father. My chest hurts. It was the trump card. It was the weapon they used whenever I tried to erect a fence around my life. I typed one final response. If he is having active chest pain, call 911. If it is just a checkup, take a taxi. I'm going back to work. I turned off my phone. I shoved it deep into my scrub pocket. My hands were trembling, not from fear, but from the sheer adrenaline of saying no. It felt dangerous. It felt like walking on a tightrope without a net. 2 hours later, I was at the nurse's station, updating a chart for a patient with a broken tibia, when the double doors of the waiting room burst open. The noise level in the ER was always high, a constant hum of beeping monitors, groaning patients, and urgent conversations. But the voice that cut through the air was distinct. It was a voice designed to shatter glass. I want to see her. Where is she? Where is my daughter who left her father to die? My blood ran cold. I looked up. Valerie was standing at the triage desk. She was wearing her faux fur coat and clutching her designer bag like a weapon. Her face was flushed, her eyes scanning the room with manic intensity. My father was trailing behind her, looking sheepish and entirely not in the throes of a cardiac arrest. Ma'am, you cannot be back here. The triage nurse, a tough woman named Brenda, said firmly. Do not tell me what I can do, Valerie screamed. She spotted me. Her eyes locked onto mine, and she pointed a manicured finger across the room. There she is. Morgan, you look at me when I'm talking to you. The entire ER stopped. Patients on gurneys turned their heads. Dr. Lennox, the attending physician, looked up from a computer terminal. I felt the heat rise in my neck. I felt the familiar shrinking sensation, the urge to run over, apologize, and drag them out of there before they could embarrass me further. But then I remembered the word I had typed on my laptop that morning. Evidence. This was not a family dispute. This was a public disturbance. Valerie marched toward the nurse's station, bypassing the security line. Do you know what she did? She announced to the room at large, gesturing at me as if I were a criminal on display. Her father needed a doctor, and she said no. She said to call a taxi. What kind of nurse treats her own flesh and blood like garbage? Mom, stop, I said. My voice was quiet, but it was steady. I did not step out from behind the desk. I kept the physical barrier between us. Do not you tell me to stop, Valerie shrieked. She reached over the counter, trying to grab my arm. You are coming with us right now. You are going to pay for the appointment, and you are going to apologize to your father. A large hand intercepted her wrist. It was Marcus, one of the hospital security guards. He was 6 feet 4 inches tall and had known me for 5 years. Ma'am, Marcus said, his voice deep and calm. You are assaulting a staff member. You need to let go. Valerie looked at him, shocked. She tried to yank her arm back. I am her mother. I have a right to discipline her. Not here. You do not, Marcus said. He did not let go. This is a place of business. You are disrupting patient care. You need to leave, now. Greg, Valerie wailed, turning to my father. Do something! They are manhandling me! My father looked at me. For a moment, I thought he might finally step up. I thought he might say, Valerie, that is enough. Instead, he looked at his shoes. Morgan, just fix this, he mumbled. I cannot fix this, Dad, I said. I looked at Marcus. Please escort them out. They are not patients. Valerie gasped. The sound was theatrical, sucked in through clenched teeth. You are kicking us out? After everything I have done for you? Go, I said. Marcus gently but firmly guided Valerie toward the exit. She was still shouting as the automatic doors slid shut behind her, her voice muffled by the heavy glass. Ungrateful. Cold-hearted. Wait until the family hears about this. Silence returned to the nurse's station. It was a heavy, awkward silence. Dr. Lennox walked over to me. He was a man in his 50s, with graying hair and eyes that had seen every tragedy a city could produce. He leaned against the counter. "You okay, Hale?" he asked. "I am so sorry. Dr. Lennox," I stammered, fighting the urge to cry. "It will not happen again. I will make sure they know not to come back." "Do not apologize," he said. His voice was not angry. It was curious. "That was intense. Do you need us to file a formal trespass order? Because we can. I can have legal draw it up by 5 o'clock. I looked at him. He was offering me a shield. He was offering to use the institution's power to protect me. I might," I said. "Not yet, but maybe." "The offer stands," he said. He tapped the counter. "And Hale, you are a good nurse. What just happened there? That has nothing to do with your competence. Whatever she said. It is noise. Do not let it in." He walked away. That evening, during my break, I sat in the staff lounge, on the bulletin board, buried under flyers for yoga classes and bake sales, was a small, discreet pamphlet. Support Group for Healthcare Workers, Navigating Toxic Family Dynamics. I had walked past it 100 times. Today, I took it down. The meeting was in the hospital chapel basement at 7 o'clock. I went. There were only 6 people there, a paramedic, 2 other nurses, a resident doctor. We sat in a circle. I listened as a woman named Sarah talked about her brother who stole her pain medication pads. I listened to a man named David talk about his mother who faked cancer every Christmas to keep him from visiting his in-laws. When it was my turn, I did not know where to start, so I started with the scrapbook. I told them about the slap. I told them about the scene in the lobby. I expected them to tell me I should forgive her because she was my mother. That is what society always said. Instead, they nodded. "That is classic narcissistic rage," David said. "You set a boundary. So she tried to destroy you publicly to regain control. It is an extinction burst." "You are not crazy," Sarah said softly, "and you are not the only one." Those 5 words hit me harder than the slap. You are not the only one. My phone continued to vibrate in my pocket throughout the meeting. I did not look at it until I got home. When I finally checked, there were 42 new messages. Valerie had gone nuclear. She had texted Aunt Linda, Uncle Bob, Cousin Mike, everyone. "Aunt Linda, Morgan, your mother is distraught. She says you had security throw her out on the street? How could you be so cruel to your own parents?" "Uncle Bob, your dad is sick. Kid, cut them some slack." Then came the picture. It was sent from my father's phone. It was a photo of Greg lying in his bed at home, looking pale, with a blood pressure cuff on his arm. The caption read, "Look what you did to him. His pressure is 180/100. If he has a stroke tonight, it is on your hands." Panic flared in my chest. The guilt was a sharp, physical pain. What if he really was sick? What if I had killed him? I grabbed my keys. I was halfway to the door when I stopped. I looked at the photo again. I zoomed in. On the bedside table next to my dying father was a glass of scotch, half empty, and in the reflection of the mirror behind him, I could see Valerie holding the phone up, checking her hair in the glass. He was not having a stroke. He was having a drink. I walked back to the table. I did not reply. Instead, I took a screenshot. I saved the image to a folder on my phone labeled harassment. I took screenshots of Aunt Linda's text, Uncle Bob's text, and Valerie's 42 messages. I was turning the chaos into data. The next morning, the rumor mill at the hospital was churning. Nurses love gossip almost as much as they love coffee. I was in the break room when I heard 2 radiology techs whispering by the vending machine. "Did you hear about the sale on Ridgeview Drive?" one whispered. "In Horizon Hills? The mansion with the gate?" "Yeah. Some buyer from New York paid cash, $5 million, sight unseen. Apparently, it is an old lady. Her last name is Hale." My hand froze on the coffee pot. "Hale?" the other tech said. "Like Morgan?" "Maybe. They say she is loaded, like private jet loaded. I walked out of the break room before they saw me. My heart was hammering against my ribs. Horizon Hills was the most exclusive neighborhood in Evermont. It was where the steel magnates used to live. If Eleanor Hale had bought a house there, she was not just visiting, she was moving in. I went to my locker and pulled out my laptop. I opened the saved emails from years ago. I looked at the signature block on the last email from Grandma Eleanor. Eleanor Hale, CEO, Hale Ventures, 500 Fifth Avenue, New York. I Googled Hale Ventures. The results were staggering. Real estate, tech investment, philanthropy, a net worth estimated in the billions. And then I saw a news article from 3 days ago in a local business journal. New York tycoon acquires historic estate in Evermont. Rumors of new charitable foundation launch. It was true. I stared at the phone number in the signature block of the email. It was a landline. I went out to my car during lunch. I needed privacy. I dialed the number. The ringing sound seemed to last for an eternity. Hale Ventures, office of the CEO. A woman's voice answered. It was crisp, professional, and polite. Hello, I said. My voice cracked. I cleared my throat. I am calling for Eleanor Hale. Mrs. Hale is currently in a board meeting, the secretary said. May I ask who is calling? I opened my mouth to say Morgan Hale, her granddaughter. But the words stuck in my throat. I thought of Valerie screaming in the lobby. I thought of the text messages. If I claimed this powerful woman as my family, what would she see? A 32-year-old nurse who let her mother bully her? A woman who had rejected her for a decade? I am just an old acquaintance, I stammered. My name is Morgan, from Evermont. Would you like to leave a message, Morgan? No, I said quickly. No message. I will try again later. I hung up. My hands were sweating. I felt like a fraud. I was not ready. I needed to be stronger before I faced her. I went back to work. But the universe, or rather, my family, was not done with me. 2 days later, a heavy envelope arrived at my apartment. It was cream-colored, expensive stock. It was an invitation to Sienna's wedding. I opened it. Inside, falling out onto the table, was a handwritten note on a sticky pad. Morgan, we forgave you for the hospital scene because we know you are stressed. But for the wedding, Mom needs you to take point on the kitchen staff at the resort. The caterers are good, but they do not know the family recipes. You need to arrive 3 days early to prep. Please do not embarrass us again. We told the groom's family you are managing the food service as your gift. I stared at the note. They did not want a sister at the wedding. They wanted a head chef who worked for free. They had actually told the billionaire in-laws that I was managing the food service. Before I could even process the audacity, my phone rang. It was a number I recognized. It was the internal extension for the hospital's Human Resources Department. Hello? I answered. Morgan Hale? It was Mrs. Gable, the HR director. Her voice was tight. I need you to come to my office immediately, and please bring your union representative if you wish. My stomach dropped. What is this about? We received a concerning phone call regarding your mental stability and your fitness to practice, Mrs. Gable said. Given the nature of the allegations, substance abuse and erratic emotional behavior, we need to discuss this formally. Valerie. She had done it. She had realized that screaming in the lobby got her kicked out, so she had escalated. She was trying to take my license. She was trying to cut off my income so I would have to crawl back to her. Fear washed over me, cold and sharp, but then something else kicked in. The data, the evidence, the case study. I will be there in 10 minutes, I said calmly. And Mrs. Gable, I will be bringing documentation. I hung up. I did not call a union rep. I called Dr. Lennox. Sir, I said when he answered his pager, my mother just called HR and reported me as unstable. They are calling me in. I am on my way down, Dr. Lennox said instantly. Do not say a word until I get there. I printed out the screenshots. I printed out the text messages where Valerie threatened to ruin me if I did not pay the bills. I printed out the log of the security incident from 2 days ago. I walked into the HR office not as a scared daughter, but as a clinician presenting a case. I sat down across from Mrs. Gable. Dr. Lennox stood beside me, his arms crossed, looking like a thundercloud. "The allegation," Mrs. Gable said, looking at a notepad, "is that you are suffering from a breakdown, that you have been verbally abusive to family members, and that you may be stealing medication to cope with stress." The caller identified herself as a concerned relative. "The caller is my mother, Valerie Hale," I said. I slid the folder across the desk. "She was escorted off the premises by security 48 hours ago for assaulting me in the lobby. Here is the incident report number." Mrs. Gable blinked. She picked up the paper. "And here," I continued, sliding the second sheet, "is a text message from her dated yesterday, stating, 'If you do not apologize and give me the money for Dad, I will make sure you lose that job you love so much.'" I looked Mrs. Gable in the eye. "This is not a mental health crisis," I said. "This is retaliation. I am a victim of domestic harassment, and my abuser is using this hospital as a weapon. I am requesting that this meeting be logged as evidence of that harassment, and that her number be blocked from the hospital switchboard." Dr. Lennox stepped in. "I can vouch for Morgan's clinical performance 100%. She is the most stable nurse on my floor. This report is malicious. If the hospital entertains it, we are enabling the abuser." Mrs. Gable looked at the documents. She looked at Dr. Lennox. Then she looked at me. Her expression softened from suspicion to shock. I see," she said. "I will make a note in the file. We will disregard the complaint." "I want a copy of that note," I said. "In writing, today." "Of course," she said. I walked out of that office 10 minutes later with a signed document proving that my mother had tried to sabotage my career and failed. I stood in the hallway, clutching the paper. My hands were still shaking, but I felt a strange, wild sense of power. Valerie had fired her biggest gun, and I was still standing. I looked at my phone. I opened the email app. I looked at the draft to Eleanor Hale. I deleted the subject line, "The scrapbook in the trash." I typed a new one. Subject: "I am ready to talk." I hit send. The spreadsheet on my laptop screen was a grid of gray and white lines, cold and clinical, but the story it told was a tragedy written in dollars and cents. I named the file The Hale Ledger. For the last 3 nights, I had not slept. I had pulled bank statements from the last 5 years, cross-referencing them with credit card bills, Venmo history, and the mental notes I had scribbled in my journal. I treated it like a forensic audit. Every time my memory tried to soften a detail, telling me, "Oh, that was just a birthday gift," I forced myself to look at the amount. Item: Cabo San Lucas Family Vacation. Payer: Morgan Hale. Beneficiaries: Valerie, Greg, Sienna. Cost: $4,200. Note: I slept on the pull-out couch while Sienna got the master suite because she needed her rest for law school exams. Item: Sienna's secret credit card bill. Payer: Morgan Hale. Cost: $3,500. Note: Valerie told me Sienna would be arrested if this was not paid immediately. I found out later the charges were for designer shoes, not textbooks. Item: Greg's emergency dental surgery. Payer: Morgan Hale. Cost: $1,800. Note: he bought a new set of golf clubs 2 weeks later. I typed in the final entry, a transfer I had made last month to cover the deposit for the venue of Sienna's bridal shower. I hit the sum function. The number appeared in bold black text at the bottom of column B. $52,415. I stared at the number. The hum of the refrigerator was the only sound in the apartment. $52,000. That was a down payment on a house, a real house, with a garden and a door that locked properly. Not this leaky apartment in Riverside Flats. That was a master's degree. That was a retirement fund. That was my life. Liquidated and poured down the drain of my mother's vanity and my sister's entitlement. For a moment, I felt a wave of nausea so strong I had to put my head between my knees. I had not just been helpful, I had been robbed. And the worst part was that I had handed them the wallet. But as the nausea faded, it was replaced by something harder. A cold, jagged clarity. I was done being the bank. I minimized the spreadsheet and opened my cloud storage. I had started digging through digital memories, looking for proof of who they really were. I found a video from 2 years ago. It was a recording of a FaceTime call I had accidentally kept running. In the video, Valerie was screaming at me because I had arrived 10 minutes late to drive her to the salon. Her face was twisted, ugly with rage. "You are useless," she shrieked on the screen. "You are just like your grandmother's side of the family. Selfish, cold. You only think about yourself." Then, in the video, the doorbell rang. It was a neighbor dropping off a package. The transformation was instant. Valerie's face smoothed out, her voice pitched up an octave, dripping with honey. "Oh, thank you so much. Brenda," she chirped to the neighbor. "Morgan was just telling me about her shift. Poor dear works so hard saving lives. We are so proud of her." I watched the video 3 times. It was terrifying. It was a performance. She knew exactly what she was doing. She could turn the abuse on and off like a light switch. That meant it was not uncontrollable anger. It was a choice. The next morning, I sat in the office of Dr. Kendra Ford. She was a therapist I had found through the hospital's referral program, a specialist in complex trauma and high-conflict family dynamics. Dr. Ford was a woman with sharp eyes and a voice that did not tolerate nonsense. I showed her the ledger. I showed her the video. "It is not just that she is strict, is it?" I asked, my voice small. "I keep telling myself she just wants the best for me." "Dr." Ford leaned forward. "Morgan, we need to use the correct terminology here. This is not strict parenting. This is coercive control. This is financial abuse. And the gaslighting, the way she rewrites reality to make you doubt your own memory, is textbook." Hearing a professional say the words felt like a diagnosis. Financial abuse, gaslighting. It was not just in my head. I was not the crazy one. "I want you to do an exercise," Dr. Ford said. "I want you to write a letter. Call it the letter of truth. Address it to yourself. List every time you were hit, every time you were humiliated, every time you were tricked out of money. Do not sugarcoat it. Do not make excuses for them. Write it as if you are writing a chart for a patient." That night, I wrote the letter. It was 5 pages long. I wrote about the time Valerie told me nobody would ever love me because I was too intense, right after I had confronted her about stealing money from my piggy bank when I was 12. I wrote about the time Greg watched Valerie throw a plate at my head and simply turned up the volume on the television. I wrote about the scholarship I gave up, the career I sacrificed. By the time I finished, I was not crying. I was furious. The narrative that we are a happy family and Morgan is just difficult shattered completely. The next step was legal. I made an appointment with a pro bono legal clinic that helped hospital staff. The lawyer was a tired-looking man named Mr. Henderson, who smelled of old coffee and cheap tobacco. But he listened to me with an intensity that made me feel seen. "I need to know my options," I said, clutching my folder of evidence. "If she comes to the hospital again, if she tries to access my bank accounts again, what can I do?" "You can file for a restraining order," Mr. Henderson said, taking notes. "Given the assault in the lobby, you have grounds. We can also draft a cease and desist letter regarding the harassment of your employer." He paused, looking at the name on my intake form. "Hale," he muttered. "Any relation to Eleanor Hale, the venture capitalist?" I stiffened. "She is my grandmother, but we are estranged." Mr. Henderson let out a low whistle. "Estranged? That is a shame. I did some work for a nonprofit she funds a few years back, a shelter for domestic violence survivors." I blinked. "What?" "Yeah," he said, tapping his pen. "Eleanor Hale. Tough as nails in the boardroom, from what I hear. But she has a zero-tolerance policy for bullies. She poured millions into legal defense funds for women trying to leave abusive households. She is kind of a legend in the family law circle." The room seemed to tilt. Valerie had always told me Eleanor was a monster. She only cares about money. Morgan, she hates us because we are not rich enough. She thinks family is a burden. But a woman who funded domestic violence shelters did not sound like someone who hated family. She sounded like someone who hated abuse. Valerie had lied. She had not just blocked the emails. She had constructed an entire false persona for my grandmother to keep me afraid of her. She knew that if I ever met Eleanor, the real Eleanor, I would have an ally, and Valerie could not afford for her victim to have an ally. I went home and opened my laptop. I pulled up the draft I had started and abandoned so many times. Subject: I am ready to talk. I deleted the body of the text. I took a deep breath. I needed to be Morgan Hale, the nurse. I needed to be clinical. I needed to present the case. Dear grandmother, my name is Morgan Hale. I am 32 years old. I am the daughter of Greg Hale. I am writing to you because I have recently discovered that for the last 10 years, my communication with you has been intercepted. I did not write the emails rejecting you. My mother, Valerie, accessed my accounts and wrote them. I am not writing to ask for money. I am not writing to ask to be reinstated in a will. I am writing because I need to put the truth on the record. Attached is a file containing financial records of funds misappropriated from me by my parents over the last 5 years. Attached is a log of physical and verbal abuse. Attached is a copy of the incident report from Evermont City Medical Center, where security removed my mother for assaulting me 3 days ago. I do not know if you will believe me. I do not know if it matters anymore, but I refuse to let her version of the story be the only one that exists. Sincerely, Morgan. I attach the Hale ledger. I attach the video. I attach the HR report. I hit send. My heart hammered against my ribs, but I forced myself to breathe. I called Dr. Ford to tell her what I had done. Good, she said. You spoke your truth, but Morgan, listen to me closely. Do not make Eleanor the solution. She is a variable. We do not know how she will react. The path to freedom has to be yours. Regardless of whether the billionaire grandmother rides in to save the day, do not trade one dependency for another. I know, I said. I am not waiting for a savior. I am just clearing the wreckage. I hung up and went to work on my rear guard. I called the principal of the private school where my cousin, Mike's son, attended. I was listed as the emergency contact and the primary pickup person because Valerie had volunteered me for the role years ago. This is Morgan Hale, I told the secretary. I am calling to inform you that I will no longer be available for emergency pickups or after-school care. Please remove my name from the authorized list immediately. Oh, the secretary sounded confused. Mrs. Hale, your mother, said you loved doing it. My mother was mistaken, I said firmly. Remove me, today. I hung up. I logged into my bank account and changed the password. I set up two-factor authentication, linking it to a burner phone I had bought at a convenience store, just in case Valerie managed to clone my SIM card or access my main phone. I created a new email address for all my legal correspondence and shared the login only with Dr. Ford and Mr. Henderson. I was locking the doors. I was pulling up the drawbridge. That night, the apartment was quiet. The snow had stopped falling, leaving the world outside muffled in white. I went to the corner of the living room where I had left the trash bag I had brought from the car. I reached in and pulled out the scrapbook. It was battered. The leather cover was scratched where it had hit the metal rim of the bin. A few pages were bent. There was a stain of grease on the back. I took it to the kitchen table. I laid out my tools: surgical tape, glue, a soft cloth, and a new leather patch I had bought from a craft store. I began to operate. I wiped away the grease. I carefully smoothed out the crinkled pages. Using a heavy book to press them flat, I used the surgical tape, clear and strong, to repair the tears in the binding. As I worked, I looked at the photos I had chosen with such desperate hope just a week ago. The photos of me and Mom. The photos of Dad. I did not rip them out. They were part of the history. You cannot heal a patient by pretending the wound is not there. You have to clean it, stitch it, and let it scar. This book was no longer a gift for Valerie. She had forfeited her right to it when she threw it away. It was mine now. It was a record of what I had survived. It was a testament to the fact that I had tried, that I had loved them with everything I had, and that it was not my fault that their love was a black hole. I turned to the very last page. It was blank. I had originally intended to paste a picture of the whole family at Christmas dinner there. I took a black marker. My hand was steady. In the center of the blank white page, I wrote, "This is the page where the victim died, and the survivor began to write." I closed the book. I ran my hand over the scarred cover. It was not perfect anymore. It was damaged, but it was whole, and for the first time in my life, so was I. I went to bed, and for the first time in 32 years, I slept without dreaming of drowning. The email arrived on a Tuesday morning in early October, landing in my inbox with the heavy, ominous thud of a gavel sentencing a prisoner. The subject line was written in all capital letters: "Urgent wedding logistics and your assignment." It was from Valerie. I opened it, my stomach tightening into the familiar knot that had been a permanent resident of my abdomen for 20 years. The email was not a request. It was a manifesto. It was 3 pages long, color-coded, and detailed down to the minute. Sienna's wedding was set for Thanksgiving weekend. It was to be held at the Grand Ocean Resort in Seabrook Cove, a coastal town known for its rocky cliffs, freezing winds in November, and exorbitant prices. Valerie had decided that since the groom's family was paying for the venue, the Hale family needed to contribute labor to show our gratitude. By Hale family, she meant me. I scrolled through the list of duties assigned to Morgan. Task 1. Arrive at Seabrook Cove 4 days early to inspect all guest suites and steam the linens personally. Task 2. Coordinate with the florist to ensure the white roses are the exact shade of ivory Sienna likes. If they are wrong, drive to the city market, 3 hours away, to replace them. Task 3. Act as the point of contact for all 75 guests on the bride's side, handling airport pickups and dietary restrictions. Task 4. Manage the kitchen staff during the rehearsal dinner to ensure the crab cakes are served at exactly 140 degrees. The list went on. There were 25 distinct tasks. At the bottom, in bold red font, Valerie had written, "Since you are not a bridesmaid due to the aesthetic mismatch of the dresses, this is your way of being part of the special day. Do not expect reimbursement for travel or lodging, as this is your gift to your sister." I stared at the screen. I did the math in my head. 4 days of unpaid labor, 5 nights of hotel costs at a resort where the cheapest room was $400 a night, gas, food, and the emotional cost of being treated like a servant while my sister played princess. I closed the laptop and walked to the window of my apartment. The autumn rain was falling against the glass, blurring the gray streets of Evermont. For the first time, the fear did not come. Instead, I felt a strange, cold curiosity. I wondered what would happen if I simply did not do it. I went back to my desk and logged into my banking app. I navigated to a sub-savings account I had named Family Emergency Fund. I had started it 5 years ago, putting away $50 here and there, terrified that one day Dad would actually have a heart attack or Mom would crash her car, and I would be the one expected to pay. I looked at the balance. $5,420. It was money I had scraped together by working double shifts, by skipping lunches, by wearing shoes until the soles wore through. It was blood money. I looked at Valerie's email again. "This is your gift to your sister." I opened a new tab on my browser. I typed in a name I had seen in a travel magazine in the hospital waiting room months ago: Sterling Bay. It was an artsy, quiet town on the edge of a massive, mirror-like lake in the mountains, famous for its silence, its galleries, and its total lack of pretension. It was the anti-Seabrook Cove. I found the website for the Lakeside Sterling Hotel. It was a historic property with wraparound porches, fireplaces in every room, and a strict no-noise policy. I looked at the dates: Thanksgiving week. The price for a Lakeview suite with a private balcony and a deep soaking tub was $3,000 for the week. I looked at the price, then I looked at my family emergency fund. A thought crystallized in my mind, sharp and brilliant as a diamond. This was a family emergency. The emergency was that the family was killing me, and I needed to be rescued. My heart began to race, slamming against my ribs like a trapped bird. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. If I did this, there was no going back. This was not just saying no to a dinner. This was declaring war on their most sacred ritual, the public performance of the Happy Hale family. I clicked Book Now. I typed in my credit card information. I confirmed the dates, November 24th to December 1st. When the confirmation screen appeared, "Thank you, Morgan. Your sanctuary awaits." I let out a breath I felt like I had been holding since I was 12 years old. I was not going to the wedding. The next morning, I walked into the Human Resources office at the hospital. Mrs. Gable looked up, surprised to see me. "Morgan, is everything all right?" "Yes," I said. My voice was steady. "I am submitting a request for time off. I need to use my accumulated vacation days, all of them, for the week of Thanksgiving." Mrs. Gable frowned. "That is a high-demand week. Morgan, usually, we need 3 months' notice. And I thought you were working the holiday shift. Your mother called and said—" I cut her off. "My mother does not work here, Mrs. Gable, and I have not taken a vacation in 4 years. I have accrued over 300 hours of leave. I am burnt out. If I do not take this time to recover, I am afraid my patient care will suffer." I saw the shift in her eyes, the magic words, patient care. "Let me check with Dr. Lennox," she said. She picked up the phone. I waited. I could hear the murmur of Dr. Lennox's voice on the other end. Mrs. Gable hung up. She smiled, a genuine, soft smile. Dr. Lennox said, and I'm quoting him here, "Give her the week. If anyone deserves to disappear for 7 days, it is Hale. Your request is approved." I walked out of the hospital into the crisp October air. I felt lighter, physically lighter. I did not tell Valerie. Not yet. I let 2 weeks pass. I let her send 3 follow-up emails adding more tasks to the list. Pick up the groom's aunt from the airport at midnight. Iron the napkins because the hotel does not do it right. I waited until 10 days before the wedding. Valerie called me on a Sunday afternoon. I was doing laundry. "Morgan," her voice was shrill. "I looked at the reservation list for the resort. Your name is not on it. You know the block closes tomorrow. Do not tell me you are waiting until the last minute to book. The prices will go up, and do not expect your father to cover the difference." I sat down on my couch. I held the phone away from my ear. I looked at the suitcase I had already started packing. "I did not book a room, Mom," I said. "Well, do it now," she snapped. "And make sure you get a room on the first floor near the kitchen so you can run back and forth easily." "I am not booking a room, Mom," I said, "because I am not going." There was a silence on the other end, a long, heavy vacuum of sound. "Excuse me?" Valerie's voice dropped to a whisper. "What did you say?" "I am not coming to the wedding," I repeated. "I will not be coordinating the logistics. I will not be steaming the linens, and I will not be there." The explosion was instantaneous. "Are you insane?" she screamed. The sound distorted the speaker. "This is your sister's wedding. This is the most important day of her life. We have told the groom's family you are handling everything. You are going to humiliate us. You are going to ruin everything." "I sent a gift," I said calmly. "A set of crystal glasses. It should arrive on Tuesday. I wish Sienna the best, but I cannot do this anymore." "You cannot do what?" Valerie screeched. "Be a part of this family? Because that is what you are saying. If you do not show up at Seabrook Cove, Morgan, do not you dare ever call this house again. Do not you dare come to Christmas. You are done. You hear me? You are dead to us." I closed my eyes. I thought of the leather-bound book in the trash. I thought of the slap. "Okay," I said. "Okay?" she choked. "That is all you have to say?" "Yes," I said. Okay, goodbye, Mom. I hung up. My hands were shaking so hard I dropped the phone on the couch, but I did not call back. 5 minutes later, the group chat detonated. Sienna, how could you be so jealous? You cannot stand that I am happy, can you? You are pathetic. Aunt Linda, Morgan, your mother is on the floor. She cannot breathe. You are causing a medical emergency. Fix this. Uncle Bob, ungrateful brat. Greg, Morgan, please, just apologize. She is going to have a stroke. Then came the photo. It was a selfie taken by Sienna. It showed Valerie lying on the chaise lounge in the living room, one hand clutching her chest, her face contorted in a mask of agony, mascara running down her cheeks. But in the corner of the frame, I could see the reflection of a wine glass on the table, full and undisturbed. I looked at the image. I looked at the timestamps. Doctor, Ford had told me this would happen. They will escalate, she had said. They will use guilt like a grappling hook to drag you back in. You have to cut the rope. I opened the settings on my phone. I selected the group chat, the Hail Heart. I clicked Leave Conversation. Then I went to my Messages settings. I created a new folder. I named it the Archive. I set a rule. All messages from Valerie, Greg, and Sienna were to be automatically diverted to this folder, without notification, without sound. I watched as the unread badge on my Messages app disappeared. Silence. For the first time in my life, my phone was silent. 10 days later, on the morning of Thanksgiving, I was not standing in a steamy industrial kitchen in Seabrook Cove peeling 500 shrimp. I was sitting in seat 4A on a regional jet, cruising at 30,000 feet above the cloud layer. The sky outside the window was a brilliant, piercing blue. The sun flooded the cabin. I had a glass of ginger ale on my tray table and the repaired scrapbook in my lap. I ran my fingers over the tape that held the spine together. It looked wounded. Yes, but it held. I opened a brand new notebook I had bought at the airport. The cover was a soft, textured gray. It smelled of fresh paper and possibility. I looked down at the clouds. Somewhere down there, hundreds of miles away, my mother was likely screaming at a florist. My father was likely hiding in the hotel bar. Sienna was likely complaining that her sister was a monster who tried to sabotage her big day. But up here, none of that existed. Up here, I was just a woman on a plane, going to a place where nobody knew her name. The plane touched down in Sterling Bay 2 hours later. I took a shuttle to the hotel. The Lakeside Sterling Hotel was even more beautiful than the pictures. It was a grand, white Victorian building perched on the edge of a lake that looked like a sheet of hammered silver. The air smelled of pine needles and wood smoke. I walked up the steps to the reception desk. I was wearing my old coat and carrying a battered suitcase, bracing myself for the look of judgment I always got from Valerie when I did not look expensive enough. The receptionist, a young woman with kind eyes, smiled warmly. "Welcome to Lakeside, Ms. Hale," she said. "We have upgraded you to the deluxe suite because we saw it was your first stay with us. We want it to be special." I blinked. "Oh, I did not pay for the upgrade." "It is complimentary," she said softly. "Here is your key. And Ms. Hale, if you need anything, extra towels, room service, or just a recommendation for a hike, please call us. It is our job to take care of you." "It is our job to take care of you." I felt a lump form in my throat. I nodded, unable to speak, and took the key. My room was on the top floor. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. It was huge. A king-sized bed with white linens that looked like clouds, a fireplace with logs already stacked, and a set of French doors that opened onto a balcony overlooking the lake. I walked out onto the balcony. The cold air hit my face, but it felt cleansing, not biting. The lake stretched out before me, vast and silent, reflecting the mountains on the other side. There was no shouting. There was no demand for me to fix anything. There was no list of tasks. I sat down on the wicker chair on the balcony. I wrapped my coat tighter around myself. I watched a lone sailboat drifting on the water, its white sail catching the last light of the afternoon sun. I opened my new notebook. I uncapped my pen. I wrote the first line. Day 1. This is the first day I'm not sitting at someone else's table, begging for scraps. This is the day I built my own table. I took my phone out. I had not checked it since I landed. I did not check the archive folder. Instead, I opened my private Instagram account, the one Valerie did not know about, the one where I only had 20 followers, mostly old nursing school friends. I snapped a photo of the view, the balcony railing, the silver lake, the mountains turning purple in the twilight, and my feet resting on the railing. I typed the caption, "For 32 years, I spent every holiday paying for the privilege of being treated like an employee. Today, I use that money to buy the one thing I could never afford before, peace." I posted it. I sat there until the sun went down and the stars came out, hard and bright in the winter sky. I felt lonely. Yes, but it was a clean loneliness. It was the loneliness of a pioneer standing on the edge of a new frontier. I went back inside to order room service, a burger and fries. Exactly what I wanted. Not the prime rib Valerie would have forced me to eat. As I waited, my phone pinged with an email notification. My stomach tightened. Had I forgotten to filter something? Was it Valerie using a new address? I picked up the phone. It was not Valerie. Subject: I read your letter. From Eleanor Hale. Eleanor. Hale at Hale Ventures. Com. I froze. My breath caught in my chest. I opened the email. It was short. Morgan. I received your package. I read the ledger. I watched the video. I have suspected for a long time that the silence between us was not natural, but I did not know the extent of the interference. I am currently in a meeting in London, but I am flying back to the States next week. I own a property in Evermont. I will be there on December 10th. When you return from your trip, and I hope you are somewhere safe and beautiful, we need to meet. You are not crazy, and you are not alone. E.H. I read the email 3 times. You are not crazy. I let the phone drop to the bedspread. I walked back to the open balcony door. The wind had picked up, rustling the pine trees below. It sounded like applause. I was not crazy, and for the first time in a decade, the door to the rest of my family, the real family, was not locked. It was opening. I took a deep breath of the freezing, pine-scented air. Okay, I whispered to the lake. I am ready. The tires of the regional jet hit the tarmac at Evermont International Airport with a jarring thud, shaking me out of the half-sleep I had drifted into during the descent. Outside the window, the sky was a flat, slate gray, a stark contrast to the crystal blue I had left behind in Sterling Bay. The vacation was over. The reality of my life was waiting for me at the gate. I sat in seat 4A and stared at my phone. It was still in airplane mode. For 7 days, I had lived in a bubble of silence. I had hiked around a frozen lake, eaten burgers in bed, and read 3 novels. I had not spoken to a single person who shared my DNA. I took a deep breath, the kind Dr. Ford had taught me to take. 4 seconds in, 4 seconds hold, 4 seconds out. Then, I swiped my thumb across the screen and turned off airplane mode. The phone did not just ping, it convulsed in my hand. The screen lit up with a cascade of notifications that scrolled so fast they were a blur. 57 missed calls, 112 text messages, 14 voicemails. My heart kick-started into a frantic rhythm, the old anxiety flooding my veins like ice water. I felt the familiar urge to apologize, to fix, to smooth things over. But then I touched the cover of the notebook in my bag, the one where I had written I am building my own table, and I forced my hand to stop shaking. I walked off the plane and found a quiet corner near the baggage claim. I put in my earbuds. I needed to triage the damage. I started with the voicemails. The first one was from Valerie. It was time-stamped 2 days ago, at 11 o'clock at night. Morgan. Her voice was thick, distorted by what sounded like sobbing. I hope you are happy. Your father collapsed. He collapsed right in the middle of the reception. His heart gave out because of the stress, Because you were not there. Everyone was asking where you were, and the shame. The shame just killed him. We are in the ambulance now. If he dies tonight, Morgan, his blood is on your hands. Do not bother coming to the hospital. You have done enough. The message ended with a jagged intake of breath. I stood frozen against the cold concrete wall of the terminal. Panic flared in my chest. Hot and blinding. Dad. Heart attack. Ambulance. But then, the nurse in me took over. The nurse who knew that panic was useless in a code blue. I looked at the timestamp again. 2 days ago. If my father had suffered a massive cardiac event, there would be follow-up messages about the ICU, about surgery, about funeral arrangements. I scrolled through the rest of the texts. There were insults. There were guilt trips. But there was no obituary. I opened my contacts and dialed the direct line for the nurses' station at Evermont General, the hospital where my family always went because it was in-network. Emergency department. This is Sarah. A familiar voice answered. Sarah. It is Morgan Hale, I said, keeping my voice steady. I am off shift, but I'm hearing a rumor that my father, Greg Hale, was admitted 2 nights ago. Cardiac event. Can you check the census for me? I need to know if I should come straight there from the airport. There was the sound of typing on the other end. Greg Hale, Sarah muttered. Date of birth, March 12th, 1965? Yes. I am looking at the admission log for the last 72 hours, Sarah said. I have a Greg Hall with an A, broken ankle, but no Greg Hale. Nothing in the ER, nothing in the cath lab, nothing in the ICU. Are you sure? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Positive, Morgan. The system does not lie. Is everything okay? Yeah, I said, letting out a breath that fogged the glass of the terminal window. Everything is fine. Just family confusion. I hung up. He had not collapsed. He had not been in an ambulance. Valerie had recorded that voicemail, likely from the back of a taxi or the hotel bathroom, creating a radio drama to terrorize me from 500 miles away. The cruelty of it took my breath away. She had weaponized my father's life to punish me for taking a vacation. I moved on to the text messages. There was a photo from Sienna. It was a close-up of her wedding dress, a sprawling gown of white lace. On the hem, there was a dark, jagged stain, red wine. Sienna. Look at this. Look at what you did. I stared at the screen. Look at what you did. Below the photo was a paragraph of text. Because you were too selfish to manage the kitchen like Mom asked. The catering staff was disorganized. A waiter bumped into Cousin Mike, and Mike spilled his Cabernet all over my train. This happened before the first dance. If you had been there, you would have been supervising the floor. You would have stopped it. You are the domino that knocked everything down. I hope your little trip was worth ruining my wedding photos. The logic was so twisted it was almost impressive. In Sienna's mind, I was omnipotent. I was responsible for the gravity that pulled the wine to the floor. I was responsible for the waiter's clumsiness. I was responsible for Cousin Mike's unsteady hand. I did not reply. I swiped left and archived the message. Then came the flying monkeys, the relatives Valerie had recruited to do her dirty work. Aunt Linda, your mother told us you abandoned them to go to a spa. I used to think you were the good one. Morgan, but leaving your family on such a big day? Shame on you. Cousin Mike, the one who spilled the wine. Nice going. Traitor. Everyone was laughing at us because the help didn't show up. Uncle Bob, you will regret this when they are gone. You only get one set of parents. Keep pushing them away and you will die alone. The words stung. They were designed to sting. They targeted my deepest fear, the fear of being unlovable, of being abandoned. I took a screenshot of the barrage. I opened my email app and sent them to Dr. Ford with the subject line, "The Fallout." Her reply came 10 minutes later, as I was waiting for my suitcase on the carousel. Dr. Ford, Morgan, breathe. This is exactly what we discussed. This is an extinction burst. They are increasing the volume of the manipulation because they realize the old buttons are not working. They are panicking. You are not crazy. They are desperate. Do not engage. Do not feed the fire. I grabbed my suitcase. It felt heavier than when I left. Or maybe I was just tired. I took a taxi back to my apartment. I did not go to my parents' house. I did not drive by to check on them. I went home. The next morning, I was back at the hospital. I was in the break room, pouring coffee, when my phone rang. It was the internal extension for human resources. Morgan? It was Mrs. Gable. Can you come down for a moment? I felt a spike of adrenaline. Not again. I walked into her office. Mrs. Gable was sitting behind her desk, looking more annoyed than concerned. Your mother called again, she said, getting straight to the point. I assumed she might, I said, sitting down. I kept my back straight. What is the allegation this time? She claimed that you are engaging in self-harm, Mrs. Gable said, reading from a note. She said you are, and I quote, spiraling out of control, and that you have threatened to hurt yourself because of the guilt over missing your sister's wedding. She wanted us to put you on mandatory administrative leave for a psychiatric evaluation. Mrs. Gable looked at me. I looked at her. I was wearing clean scrubs. My hair was neat. I was calm. I have not spoken to my mother in 2 weeks, I said. I have not threatened anyone. This is retaliation because I did not provide free catering services for the wedding. I know, Mrs. Gable said. She pushed the notepad away. I told her that we have a signed affidavit from you regarding domestic harassment on file. I told her that if she contacts this hospital again to make false medical claims about an employee, our legal department will be filing a cease and desist order for tortious interference with a business contract. I blinked. You said that? I did, Mrs. Gable said, a small, grim smile touching her lips. She hung up on me. But I wanted you to know, we are documenting everything. You are safe here, Morgan. I felt a rush of gratitude so strong it almost brought tears to my eyes. The system worked. When you told the truth and had evidence, the system actually worked. Blocked by the hospital, Valerie turned to the only weapon she had left, the court of public opinion. That evening, my burner phone buzzed. It was a message from an old friend from nursing school. Someone I hadn't seen in years. Friend, hey Morgan, I do not want to be nosy, but have you seen Facebook? Your mom is posting some really intense stuff. I did not have Facebook on my phone anymore. I had deleted the app months ago, but I logged in through the browser. There it was, a post from Valerie Hale, tagged with 45 people, including my high school teachers, our pastor, and distant cousins I had never met. My heart is broken. The post began, a mother sacrifices everything for her children. I gave up my youth, my dreams, my body to raise my girls. And how does my eldest repay me? By abandoning her sister on her wedding day, by running off to a luxury resort while her father lay sick with worry. We have tried to help her. We have covered up her instability and her cruelty for years. But I cannot be silent anymore. Please pray for our family as we deal with a daughter who has turned her back on God and blood. The comments section was a cesspool. So sorry, Valerie. Ungrateful generation. How could she? But then, I noticed something else. My inbox had 3 direct messages. One was from a neighbor who used to live next door to us when I was 10. Neighbor. Hi, Morgan. I saw your mom's post. I just wanted to say, I remember how much you used to cook and clean when you were a kid while she sat on the porch. I never bought her saint act. Hope you are okay. Another was from a cousin on my dad's side, someone who had been at the wedding. Cousin Sarah. Hey, just so you know, your dad didn't faint. He was drunk at the bar, and Sienna's dress got stained because she was dancing on a table. It wasn't the waiter. Your mom is spinning out. Stay away. I looked at the messages. The cracks were forming. Valerie's narrative was so extreme, so hysterical, that people were starting to see the holes in it. I did not reply to the comments. I did not write a counterpost. To the few people who messaged me asking what happened, I sent a single, copy-pasted response. I do not ask anyone to hate my mother. I only ask to be allowed to live my life without being hit, screamed at, or financially exploited. I hope you understand. I hit send. That was it. No defense, no drama, just the truth. The next day, while I was charting patient vitals, an email notification popped up on my phone. Sender: Eleanor Hale. Subject: I am in town. My stomach did a somersault. I opened the email. Morgan: I have arrived at the Horizon Hills property. I will be here for 2 weeks overseeing the transition of the estate. I would like to see you, if you are ready. The address is 12 Summit View Drive. The gate code is 4490 EH. I stared at the address, 12 Summit View Drive. It was the house on the highest peak of the hill, the one that looked like a fortress. I went to therapy that afternoon. I sat on Dr. Omford's beige couch and read the email out loud. Do I go? I asked. What if she is just like them? What if she wants to control me? Valerie always said she used money to pull strings. Doctor? Ford nodded. It is a valid fear. You have been conditioned to believe that love comes with a price tag, but avoiding her is also a decision based on fear. The question is, can you meet her on your terms? How do I do that? Meet in a neutral space, Dr. Ford suggested, or take someone with you, or simply set the agenda before you walk in the door. Tell her what you want and what you do not want. If she is healthy, she will respect the boundary. If she is toxic, she will push back. It is a test. I thought about it. I thought about the limo driver Valerie claimed had picked her up once. I thought about the years of silence. I pulled out my phone. I replied to Eleanor. Grandmother, I would like to meet, but I am nervous. My experience with family has been transactional. If I come, please understand that I am not asking for money. I am not asking for an inheritance. I just need to know if I have a single adult in my life who is actually on my side. I will come on Tuesday at 10 in the morning. I have to work at 2. Morgan. The reply came 2 minutes later. Tuesday at 10 is perfect. The only thing on the table is tea. No transactions, just us. I felt a strange sensation in my chest. It was hope, but it was fragile, like thin glass. That night, as I was preparing dinner in my quiet apartment, my main phone, the one I hadn't changed the number for yet, buzzed one last time. It was a text from Valerie. She must have realized the HR threats failed. She must have realized the Facebook post didn't bring me crawling back. She must have realized I was truly gone. Valerie, you have humiliated us for the last time. I am done. Do not come home for Christmas. Do not come home for Easter. I am removing you from the will. You are no daughter of mine. You are dead to us. I looked at the words. You are dead to us. For 32 years, that threat would have destroyed me. It would have sent me driving to their house in a blizzard, begging on my knees, emptying my savings account to buy their love back. But tonight, reading it in the quiet of my kitchen, with the memory of the Sterling Bay Lake in my mind, I felt something else. I felt lighter. It was not a death sentence. It was a release form. She had cut the cord. She had fired me. I didn't reply. I didn't cry. I simply pressed down on the message until the menu popped up. I selected block contact. Then I did the same for Greg, then Sienna. I put the phone down on the counter. The silence in the room was not empty. It was full. It was full of space. Space for me. Space for Tuesday. Space for whatever came next. I walked to the window and looked out at the night sky. Somewhere up there on the hill, in a house I had never seen, a billionaire grandmother was waiting for tea, and down here, in Riverside Flats, a nurse was finally, truly free. Okay, I whispered. Let us see what happens when the victim stops playing the game. The number 44 bus did not go all the way to the gates of Horizon Hills. It stopped 2 miles down the road, at the edge of the commercial district where the maids and landscapers transferred to private shuttles. I did not have a shuttle pass. I had a heavy coat, a pair of boots that had seen better winters, and a determination that felt like a stone in my stomach. I walked the 2 miles uphill. The air was biting, carrying the scent of expensive pine mulch and wood smoke from chimneys that probably cost more than my entire education. As I approached the massive iron gates of the community, I felt small. I felt like a bacteria trying to invade a sterile operating room. The security guard at the gatehouse looked at my ID, then at his clipboard, then back at me with a mixture of suspicion and surprise. "You are cleared for 12 Summit View Drive," he said, the gate buzzing open with a heavy mechanical groan. "It is a long walk, miss." "I am used to walking," I said. I walked past mansions that looked like museums. I walked past driveways filled with cars that cost more than a surgeon's annual salary. Finally, I reached the top of the hill. 12 Summit View Drive was not a house. It was a fortress of white stone and glass. Overlooking the entire valley, it was beautiful, and it was intimidating. I stood on the sidewalk, clutching my bag to my chest. Inside that bag was the case study, the Hale family and the repaired scrapbook. They were my shield and my sword. I took a breath to steady my racing heart. I was about to walk up the driveway when I noticed something. A long black limousine was parked right at the curb, its engine idling with a low, purring hum. The rear windows were tinted so dark they looked like onyx. The driver's door opened. A man in a sharp black suit stepped out. He did not look like a taxi driver. He looked like private security. "Ms. Hale?" he asked. I tightened my grip on my bag. "Yes. Mrs. Eleanor Hale is waiting for you in the vehicle," he said, gesturing to the rear door. She thought it might be more private than going inside. The neighbors in Horizon Hills tend to have very long telephoto lenses, and she prefers to keep family business off the Homeowners Association message boards. I hesitated. Getting into a strange car with a billionaire I had not seen in 2 decades felt like the beginning of a kidnapping movie. But then I thought about Valerie. I thought about the slap. I thought about the years I had spent being afraid. "Okay," I said. The driver opened the door. I ducked my head and climbed into the warmth of the cabin. The interior smelled of leather and Earl Grey tea. Sitting on the bench seat across from me was a woman who looked nothing like the grandmother I remembered from my childhood photos. Eleanor Hale was over 70 years old, but she had the posture of a steel beam. She was wearing a charcoal gray suit that was tailored to within an inch of its life. Her hair was silver, cut in a sharp, chic bob. Her eyes were the same color as mine, a piercing, cool blue. She was not alone. Beside her sat a man in his 50s with rimless glasses and a briefcase resting on his knees. "Hello, Morgan," Eleanor said. Her voice was not warm. It was not cold. It was calibrated. "Hello," I said, sitting on the edge of the leather seat. "This is Mr. Caro," Eleanor said, nodding to the man. "He is my personal attorney. I asked him to join us because I believe in transparency." "Hello, Miss Hale," Mr. Caro said, nodding politely. There was no hug. There were no tears. Eleanor did not reach out to touch my hand. She simply looked at me, her eyes scanning my face, lingering for a fraction of a second on the faint yellow bruise that was still fading on my cheekbone. Then, she picked up a file folder sitting on the seat next to her. I recognized the font on the cover. It was a printout of the email I had sent her. "I read your report," Eleanor said. "The ledger, the incident logs, the timeline." I swallowed hard. "And?" "It is excellent work," she said. "Methodical, unemotional, data-driven. You organize the evidence of your own abuse better than some of my senior analysts organize merger proposals. You could have made a very dangerous corporate auditor, Morgan." I blinked. I had expected pity. I had expected denial. I had not expected a performance review. "I did not write it to get a job," I said, my voice gaining a little strength. "I wrote it because I needed someone to know the truth." "I know," Eleanor said. She placed the file down. "And that brings us to the difficult part. If you are here to buy my silence," I said, cutting her off, "because you are worried about the family reputation, or because you are on the board of some charity that dislikes scandal, you can save your money. My reputation in this family was destroyed years ago. I have nothing left to lose." "Mr. Caro looked up, surprised by my tone, but Eleanor did not flinch. In fact, the corner of her mouth twitched upward. "She has a spine," Arthur, Eleanor said to the lawyer, Valerie always told me she was weak, fragile, a bleeder. She looked back at me. You are not weak, Morgan. Valerie says a lot of things, I said. Eleanor sighed. It was a heavy sound, the first crack in her armor. She reached into a leather portfolio and pulled out a stack of papers. When my son, your grandfather, died, I was devastated, Eleanor said quietly. I threw myself into the business. I let the distance grow. I trusted Valerie. I thought that a mother would never gatekeep her children from their grandmother. I thought that if I sent money, and if I sent emails, eventually you would come to me. She slid the papers across the small table between us. These are the emails I received from your account over the last 10 years, she said. I picked them up. My hands shook as I read. From Morgan Hale. Date, June 12th, 2015. Subject, birthday. Money. Message, I do not want your money. I do not want to see you. Please stop trying to buy my love. Mom and Dad are the only family I need. You are toxic, just like Mom says. I read another one from 3 years ago. From Morgan Hale. Message, I am too busy to visit. Honestly, I find your lifestyle repulsive. Please leave me alone. I looked up at Eleanor. I never wrote these. I know that now, Eleanor said. Her voice hardened. I compared the syntax of these emails to the report you sent me last week. The writing style is completely different. The vocabulary is different. And frankly, the cruelty in these emails has Valerie's fingerprints all over it. She writes like a person who is trying to inflict maximum damage with minimum words. She stole 10 years from us, I whispered. The realization hit me harder than the financial theft. The money was just paper. This was time. This was a relationship. She did, Eleanor said. She played on my insecurity that I was too cold, and she played on your insecurity that you were unwanted. She isolated us both so she could control the narrative, and more importantly, so she could control the flow of money. Mr. Caro cleared his throat. Ms. Hale, if I may? Eleanor nodded. Mr. Caro opened his briefcase and pulled out a thick document bound in blue paper. This is your grandmother's current will, Mr. Caro said. Or rather, the previous version. Up until 3 days ago, the estate was structured to leave a significant trust to your father, Greg Hale, with Valerie Hale as the executor in the event of his incapacity. He pulled out a second document. This, Mr. Caro said, placing it on top, is the new draft. It was filed this morning. I looked at the cover page. My name was printed in bold letters. Primary beneficiary, Morgan Hale. I have removed your father and mother completely, Eleanor said. Her voice was flat, final. They will receive a small monthly stipend to ensure they do not starve, because I am not a monster. But they will never touch the capital. They will never see the investments, and they will never control the properties. The trust, Mr. Caro explained, is structured in your name, but there are conditions. I stiffened. What conditions? You have to be free, Eleanor said. I frowned. What does that mean? It means the trust is designed to protect you from them, Eleanor said, leaning forward. The funds are locked if you cohabitate with Valerie or Greg. The funds are locked if you use them to pay their debts. The moment you give them a single cent of this money, the trust freezes. It forces you to stand on your own 2 feet, away from their influence. I stared at the document. It was a fortune. It was enough money to buy the hospital I worked at. I do not want the money, I said. I do not want a handout. I can work. I am a good nurse. I know you are, Eleanor said, and I am not asking you to quit. I am offering you a floor. Morgan, a floor so solid that they can never pull the rug out from under you again. I am offering to pay for a new apartment, a master's degree, a doctorate, or, if you want to start that foundation for abuse survivors you mentioned in your therapy notes. I looked at her sharply. How do you know about my therapy notes? You mentioned Dr. Ford in your email, Eleanor said. I looked her up. She is excellent. I am offering to fund a grant in your name for her clinic. It was overwhelming. It was a tsunami of resources aimed directly at me. Why? I asked. Why now? Because you fought back, Eleanor said. A glint of steel appeared in her eyes. I have watched your father let that woman run his life for 30 years. He is weak. I cannot help him. But you? You put together a dossier. You went to HR. You repaired that scrapbook instead of burning it. You have the Hale fire in you, Morgan, and I invest in winners. I sat back against the leather seat. I looked at the woman across from me. She was offering me the world, but she was also testing me. I accept the trust structure, I said slowly, but I am not moving in with you. Eleanor raised an eyebrow. Oh? I am not moving to Horizon Hills, I said. And I am not quitting my job at the hospital yet. I need to know that I can survive without anyone's help, including yours. If I take your money now, I am just trading one mother figure for another. I need to know that you respect my boundaries. Mr. Caro looked at Eleanor nervously. No one said no to Eleanor Hale. Eleanor stared at me. The silence stretched for 10 seconds. Then she smiled. It was a real smile this time. Good, she said. That is exactly the answer I wanted. If you had said yes immediately, I would have worried you were just looking for a new keeper. She extended her hand. We will set up the trust, she said. You stay in your apartment. You keep your job. But the safety net is there when you are ready to jump. I took her hand. Her grip was dry and strong. Thank you, I said. Do not thank me yet, Eleanor said. We have a lot of work to do. Valerie thinks she has won because you went silent. She thinks she has punished you. She has blocked me, I said. She told me I am dead to them. Excellent, Eleanor said. That gives us the element of surprise. She pressed a button on the door panel, and the lock clicked open. Go back to your life, Morgan, Eleanor said. Go to work. Pay your rent. Let them think you are suffering in the dark. Let them think they broke you. I gathered my bag. I felt different. I felt like I had walked into the limo as a soldier with a dull knife and was walking out with a nuclear launch code. I stepped out onto the curb. The wind was still cold, but I did not feel it. Before the driver could close the door, Eleanor leaned forward. Her face was in the shadow, but her voice carried clearly into the crisp air. Morgan, she said. I turned back. You do not have to do anything, she said. You can walk away. You can live your life and never speak to them again. That is a valid choice. She paused, her eyes locking onto mine. But, she continued, if there comes a day when you want justice, not just safety, but justice, you call me, and next time, I will not park down the street. Next time, I will drive this limo right up to Valerie's front lawn, and we will see who feels judged then. The driver closed the door with a solid, expensive thud. I stood on the sidewalk and watched as the long black car pulled away, gliding down the hill like a shark swimming through deep water. I looked down at the valley below, at the miles of gray streets leading back to my tiny apartment. I began the long walk back to the bus stop, but as I walked, I found myself smiling. It was not a nice smile. It was the smile of someone who had just realized that for the first time in 32 years, the gun was in the other hand. 3 days after the meeting in the limousine, a courier arrived at my apartment door. He was not the usual postal worker who shoved mail into the broken slot in the lobby. He was a private messenger in a Navy uniform, holding a heavy sealed envelope. He made me sign 3 times before he handed it over. I took the package to my kitchen table, pushing aside a half-eaten bagel and a stack of medical journals. My hands were steady as I used a steak knife to slit the seal. Inside was a thick stack of documents bound in blue paper, smelling faintly of expensive toner and lemon polish. It was the trust, the Morgan Hale Living Trust. I sat down and began to read. The legalese was dense, but Mr. Caro had attached sticky notes explaining the key clauses in plain English. Clause 4. The primary beneficiary is Morgan Hale. Clause 5. The assets include a diversified portfolio of stocks, bonds, and real estate holdings valued at. I stopped. I had to read the number 3 times. It was not just a safety net. It was a fortress. It was enough money to buy this entire apartment building and burn it down if I wanted to. But it was the final clause on page 40 that made my breath hitch in my throat. Clause 12. The right of first refusal. Mr. Caro's note read, "This clause grants the trust the exclusive option to purchase the property located at 14 Maple Crest Drive, the residence of Greg and Valerie Hale. In the event of a sale, foreclosure, or bankruptcy, the purchase price is fixed at fair market value minus the total sum of documented funds misappropriated from the beneficiary." I stared at the paper. Eleanor had not just given me money, she had given me the deed to my own trauma. If my parents ever tried to sell the house where I had been slapped, the house where I had cooked thousands of unthanked meals, the house where I was treated like a servant, I had the legal right to buy it out from under them, and I could deduct the $52,000 they stole from me from the price tag. It was a level of strategic dominance that terrified me. It was cold. It was calculating. It was exactly what Valerie would have done if she had the brains. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Eleanor. Eleanor, do not worry. They do not know, as far as Valerie is concerned. I am still the evil mother-in-law who cut them off years ago. Ignorance is their weakness. Silence is your weapon. I closed the folder. I felt a strange sensation in my chest. It was heavy, like armor. That afternoon, I went to Dr. Ford's office. I brought the documents with me, not to brag, but because I was scared. "Is this healthy?" I asked, pacing the small room while Dr. Ford sat calmly with her tea. "I mean, having this much power over them? It feels vindictive. I spent my whole life trying to get away from their games, and now I am holding the ultimate trump card." Dr. Ford adjusted her glasses. "There is a difference between revenge and justice. Morgan, revenge is emotional. It is about inflicting pain to make yourself feel better. Justice is about restoring balance. It is about consequences." "But buying their house?" I asked. "It is an option, not a mandate," she said. "Eleanor is giving you leverage. For 32 years, the power dynamic has been 100% in their favor. They had the house, the approval, the narrative. You had nothing. Now, the scales are even. The question is, what will you do with it?" "I want them to stop," I said quietly. "I do not want to hurt them. I just want them to stop lying about me. I want them to stop using me." "Then you might have to expose the lie," Dr. Ford said. "And sometimes, the truth feels like an attack to people who have built their entire lives on deception. If you walk into a dark room and turn on the light, the roaches will scatter and blame you for blinding them. That does not mean you should stay in the dark." The opportunity to turn on the light arrived 2 days later, in the form of a glossy, gold-embossed invitation that Valerie had posted on her Instagram, but naturally had not sent to me. The Evermont Society of Philanthropy invites you to the annual charity gala. Theme: The Heart of the Home, honoring the exemplary mothers of Evermont. Keynote honoree: Valerie Hale, for her tireless dedication to family and community. I stared at the screen. The irony was so thick I could choke on it. Valerie, who had slapped her daughter on Christmas Eve, who had thrown a scrapbook in the trash, was being given an award for being an exemplary mother. It was the ultimate gaslight. She was getting a trophy for the role she had failed at most spectacularly. I showed the post to Eleanor during our next meeting in the back of the limo, parked discreetly 2 blocks away from the hospital. Eleanor put on her reading glasses. She looked at the image on my phone. Then she laughed. It was a dry, sharp sound. "Exemplary mother," she repeated. "The audacity is almost impressive. She really believes it, does not she? She has told the lie so many times it has become her reality." "She will be on stage," I said, staring out the tinted window. "She will give a speech about sacrifice. She will probably cry. Everyone will clap, and I will be the villain who abandoned her." "Not necessarily," Eleanor said. She pulled out her own phone. Did you know that the Hale Foundation is the platinum sponsor for the Evermont Society of Philanthropy? I looked at her. No. We give them $50,000 a year, Eleanor said casually. That kind of donation comes with certain privileges, one of which is the right to approve the program schedule. She tapped on her screen. I am going to make a call, she said. I am going to tell the organizers that as the platinum sponsor, I will be attending this year, and I am going to suggest a small addition to the program, a segment honoring frontline caregivers, to recognize the unsung heroes who actually do the work while the exemplary mothers are posing for photos. You want me to go? I said. It was not a question. I want you to be in the room, Eleanor corrected. Not as Valerie's daughter, not as the staff, as my guest, as Morgan Hale, the heiress to the Hale fortune, sitting at the head table. She will cause a scene, I said. If I walk in there with you, she will lose her mind. Let her, Eleanor said. That is the point. We are not going to attack her. We are simply going to exist. We are going to sit there, look beautiful, and let her realize that she does not own the room anymore. We spent the next 3 days preparing. It felt less like planning a party and more like preparing for a court case. We met in a private conference room at Mr. Caro's office downtown. The table was covered in papers. Mr. Caro had printed out everything. We need a file, Mr. Caro said, sliding a sleek black folder toward me. Not the whole ledger. That is too bulky. We need a highlight reel, just in case. I opened the folder. Inside were 5 laminate sheets. Sheet 1. The screenshot of the text where Valerie threatened to get me fired from the hospital. Sheet 2. The bank transfer record showing the $52,000 taken over 5 years. Sheet 3. The incident report from the hospital security team detailing the assault in the lobby. Sheet 4. The voicemail transcript where she faked Dad's heart attack. Sheet 5. A photo of the scrapbook in the trash can. This is your shield, Mr. Caro said. You keep this in your purse. If she corners you, if she tries to spin a story to a neighbor or a donor, you do not argue. You just pull this out and say, actually, Mrs. Smith, here is the documentation. Facts are stubborn things. I ran my fingers over the laminated pages. It felt cold, clinical. It was perfect. And you need a speech, Eleanor said. I am not giving a speech, I said immediately. I cannot get up on a stage and bash my mother. No, Eleanor said. I managed to get the organizers to agree to the caregiver segment. They are going to ask you to say a few words, not about Valerie, about yourself, about what it means to be a caretaker who is often overlooked. If you speak your truth. Morgan, the people in that room will connect the dots. You do not have to name the villain for them to recognize the victim. I went home and sat at my kitchen table. I wrote draft after draft. I crossed out angry lines. I crossed out sad lines. Finally, I wrote 300 words. It was not an accusation. It was a declaration of independence. I am not the employee of my family. I am not a resource to be mined. I am a person. Meanwhile, the trap was being set. Eleanor sent the email to the organizers. Valerie, of course, heard about it immediately, but she interpreted it through the lens of her own narcissism. I heard about it through a text from my father, Greg. It came on a Thursday night, 2 days before the gala. Greg, Morgan, your mother is so excited. She heard Grandma Eleanor is coming to the gala. She thinks Eleanor is finally coming to apologize and support her big night. Mom thinks this is the reunion we have been waiting for. Please, Morgan, I know you are angry, but can you come? Just sit at the table? Mom says if you come with Eleanor, it will look like the whole family is united. It would mean the world to her. Do not ruin this. I stared at the message. Do not ruin this, the mantra of my childhood. He did not know about the trust. He did not know about the meeting in the limo. He thought I was still the scared little girl hiding in her apartment, and he thought Eleanor was just a rich relative coming to pay homage to Valerie's greatness. I typed my reply carefully. I did not apologize. I did not justify. Morgan, I will be there. Dad, I am coming as Grandma's guest. But I need you to understand one thing. This is not a reunion. This is me attending a public event. If Mom touches me, if she insults me, or if she tries to make a scene, I will not leave. I will not go cry in the bathroom. I will stand my ground, and I will speak the truth in front of everyone. Tell her that. The response from Greg was immediate. Greg, just be nice, please. He did not promise to protect me. He did not promise she would behave. He just asked me to absorb the blow, like always. But I was done being the sponge. The night before the gala, I laid my clothes out on the bed in my apartment. On the left was a simple black dress I had worn to 3 funerals and 2 office parties. It was safe. It was invisible. It was the uniform of Morgan the doormat. On the right was the dress Eleanor had sent over that afternoon. It was emerald green silk. It was structured, elegant, and bold. It had a neckline that showed off my collarbones and a cut that made me look tall, powerful. It was not a dress for a servant. It was a dress for a woman who owned the building. I reached out and touched the green silk. It felt cool under my fingertips. I picked up the simple black dress and put it back in the closet. I packed my purse, lipstick, phone, keys, and the black folder, the evidence. My phone buzzed. It was a final text from Eleanor. Eleanor, the car will be at your door at 6:45. The driver has instructions to wait until you are ready. Remember, tomorrow night is not a trial for you. You have already served your sentence. Tomorrow is just the release date. You are not alone standing in front of them anymore. I walked to the mirror in the hallway, the one with the crack in the corner that I still hadn't fixed because I used to be saving every penny for them. I looked at my reflection. The bruise on my cheek was gone, faded into memory. My eyes were clear. My jaw was set. I touched the spot where Valerie had slapped me. I remembered the sting. I remembered the heat. I remembered the feeling of being small, of being trash. Never again, I whispered to the empty apartment. I picked up the scrapbook from the table, the one with the repaired spine and the blank page at the end. I ran my hand over the cover. Tomorrow, I said softly. We filled the blank page. I turned off the lights. I was ready. If Valerie wanted a show, if she wanted to be the center of attention, she was going to get exactly what she wanted. But she was going to learn that when you invite the audience to look closely, sometimes they see the cracks in the mask. And tomorrow, I was not bringing any makeup to cover them up. The stage was set. The players were in position, and for the first time in the history of the Hale family, the script had been rewritten, and Valerie Hale had no idea she was no longer the director. The tires of the black limousine crunched softly against the gravel of the circular driveway at the Grand Meridian Evermont. Through the tinted glass, I could see the valet stand, bathed in the warm, golden glow of the hotel's entrance lights. A red carpet had been rolled out, flanked by velvet ropes and oversized floral arrangements. It was a scene designed to intimidate, to project wealth and exclusivity, the natural habitat of people like Valerie Hale. But tonight, I was arriving in a vehicle that cost more than the entire floral budget. Ready? Eleanor asked. She sat opposite me, calm as a general before battle. She reached over and adjusted the lapel of my emerald green silk coat. No, I said honestly. My hands were trembling slightly in my lap. But I am going anyway. Good girl, Eleanor said. She tapped on the partition glass. The driver, a man with shoulders like a linebacker, stepped out and opened the rear door. The cold November air rushed in, carrying the scent of expensive perfume and exhaust fumes. I stepped out first. Usually, when I arrived at family functions, I was carrying casseroles, or dragging luggage, or apologizing for being late because of a shift. I would scurry in the side door, invisible. Tonight, I stepped onto the pavement in my green silk dress, my head held high, the heels of my shoes clicking sharply on the concrete. A few guests standing near the entrance turned to look. I heard a whisper. Who is that? Is that a celebrity? Then Eleanor stepped out behind me. She moved with the slow, deliberate grace of a woman who owned the ground she walked on. She stood beside me and, in a move that sent a jolt of electricity through my spine. She linked her arm through mine. It was not a gesture of support for an invalid. It was a clamp. It was a declaration. We are a unit. Shoulders back. Morgan, she murmured, let us go ruin a party. We walked up the red carpet. The photographers near the door flashed their bulbs, recognizing Eleanor immediately. Ms. Hale, Ms. Hale, over here. We entered the ballroom. It was a sea of tuxedos and glittering gowns. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling like frozen fireworks. At the far end of the room was a stage with a massive banner. The Evermont Society of Philanthropy honors Valerie Hale, Mother of the Year. Seeing the words in 5-foot letters made bile rise in my throat. Valerie was holding court near the champagne tower. She looked radiant in a silver sequined gown, laughing at something the mayor was saying. My father, Greg, stood a few feet behind her, holding her purse, looking like a tired prop. Then, Valerie turned. Her eyes swept the room, hungry for admiration, until they landed on the entrance. They landed on Eleanor. Her face lit up with a triumphant, greedy smile. The billionaire mother-in-law finally came to bow down. Then her eyes slid to the woman on Eleanor's arm. The smile did not just fade, it fossilized. For 1/2 of 1 second, I saw the mask slip completely. I saw pure, unadulterated shock. Then panic. Then rage. But Valerie was a professional. She blinked, and the smile returned, though it was tight and brittle, like glass about to shatter. Excuse me, I saw her mouth to the mayor. She practically sprinted across the room, intercepting us before we could reach the main tables. Eleanor! Valerie gushed, reaching out as if to hug my grandmother, but stopping when she saw Eleanor's icy stare. I am so honored you came. Truly, it means so much to the family. I would not miss it, Eleanor said smoothly. And I brought a guest. I believe you know her. Valerie turned to me. Her eyes were hard little marbles. Morgan, she said through gritted teeth. You look expensive. Hello, Mom, I said. You look sparkly. We need to talk, Valerie said, her voice dropping to a hiss. She grabbed my elbow, hard, her nails digging into the silk, and steered me toward a decorative alcove behind a large fern, away from the prying eyes of the donors. As soon as we were out of earshot, the smile vanished. What the hell are you doing here? She spat, releasing my arm with a shove. And what did you tell her? Did you trick her into bringing you? Are you trying to sabotage my night? I did not trick anyone, I said, smoothing my sleeve. Grandma invited me. I am her guest. Her guest? Valerie laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. You are a traitor. You abandoned your sister at her wedding. You tried to get me arrested at the hospital, and now you show up here, dressed like that, parading around with the woman who hates us? You are trying to humiliate me. I am just attending a party. Mom, I said, why does my presence humiliate you? Unless you are afraid of what I might say. Do not you dare! Valerie stepped closer, her finger jabbing toward my face. Do not you dare open your mouth. You ruined Christmas with that trashy book of yours, digging up dirt, trying to make me look bad. You forced me to discipline you. You made me hit you. The memory flashed in my mind, the kitchen, the smell of prime rib, the sting on my cheek. You did not have to do anything, I said. My voice was steady, louder than a whisper. You hit me because you lost control, and you threw my gift in the trash because you cannot handle the truth. It was trash, Valerie hissed. Just like you are acting right now, trash wrapped in silk. Mom, I said, looking her dead in the eye. Listen to me carefully. That was Christmas. This is now. If you touch me again, if you slap me, if you grab me, I will not cry. I will not run away. I will make sure every single person in this room knows exactly what kind of mother you are. Is that a threat? Valerie's nostrils flared. It is a promise. Oh, please, a voice drawled from behind us. Sienna appeared, holding a glass of white wine. She looked beautiful in her bridesmaid dress, but her face was flushed with alcohol and annoyance. "Are you really doing this now, Morgan?" Sienna sneered. "Mom has been a wreck all week because of you. She could barely eat, and now you corner her at her own gala? You are such a narcissist. You just cannot stand it when it is not about you." "Sienna, stay out of this," I said. "No," Sienna snapped. "You brought Grandma Eleanor here to create drama. You want to ruin the family because you are jealous that Mom loves me more. Just admit it." "See," Valerie said, emboldened by her ally. "Even your sister sees it. You are sick. Morgan, you need help." "I do not need help," I said. "I need you to stop lying." "Lying?" Valerie's voice rose, cracking with hysteria. "I have sacrificed my life for you. I gave you everything, and you treat me like a monster?" She lunged. It was not a calculated move. It was a spasm of pure, reactive rage. She raised her hand, not to slap this time, but to strike. A closed fist aimed at my shoulder, a physical manifestation of her need to crush me back into submission. Her fist connected hard with my upper arm. The force of the blow caught me off guard. I stumbled backward. My heel caught on the edge of the carpet. I flailed, stepping back into the main walkway. Behind me, a waiter was passing with a large silver tray loaded with crystal champagne flutes. I collided with him. Crash. The sound was deafening. 30 glasses shattered against the marble floor. Shards of crystal exploded outward. Champagne sprayed everywhere, soaking the waiter's uniform and splashing onto the hem of my green dress. The music stopped. The chatter stopped. Every single head in the ballroom turned. I stood there, regaining my balance, my arm throbbing where she had punched me. The waiter was on his knees, apologizing frantically. "I am so sorry. I am so sorry." Valerie stood in the alcove, her hands still half raised, her face pale with sudden realization. She looked at the crowd. She looked at me. In the silence, you could hear a pin drop. I looked at the waiter. "It is not your fault," I said clearly. Then I turned to Valerie. I did not lower my voice. I did not whisper. I projected my voice to the back of the room, using the same tone I used to call a code blue. "You just hit me," I said, again. Valerie's eyes widened. "Morgan, stop," she hissed, forcing a laugh that sounded like a bark. "Do not be dramatic. You tripped. It was an accident." "It was not an accident," I said. "You punched me, just like you slapped me on Christmas Eve, just like you threw the scrapbook away." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Did she say slapped? Valerie looked around, panic setting in. She spotted Greg. "Greg, tell them. She is drunk. She is making a scene." My father stood frozen by the table, his face gray. He did not move. Then, the crowd parted. Eleanor Hale walked through the sea of guests. She did not rush. She walked with terrifying purpose. Beside her was Mr. Caro, holding the black folder. Eleanor stopped 3 feet from Valerie. She looked at the broken glass. She looked at my arm. Then she looked at Valerie. "I saw that," Eleanor said. Her voice was not loud, but it carried a weight that silenced the entire room. "I was watching from the table. You struck her." "Eleanor, please," Valerie stammered, her hands fluttering. "You know how Morgan gets. She provoked me. She stumbled. It was just a family misunderstanding. High stress." "Battering your child is not stress," Eleanor said coldly. "It is assault." "It was a tap," Valerie cried, looking for sympathy from her friends in the front row. "I was just trying to get her attention. She is hysterical." Eleanor turned to Mr. Caro. "The file, Arthur?" Mr. Caro opened the black folder. He pulled out the laminated sheet with the security report from the hospital. "Valerie Hale," Eleanor said, reading from the paper, "escorted from Evermont Medical Center on December 27th for physically assaulting a staff member, her daughter, in the lobby. Banned from the premises." She pulled out another sheet. "January 4th, voicemail transcript, faking a heart attack to manipulate Morgan into coming home. Valerie was shaking now. That is private. You cannot read that. You made it public when you hit her in front of 300 people, Eleanor said. She turned her gaze to Sienna. My sister was standing next to Valerie, looking like a deer caught in the headlights of a semi-truck. Sienna, Eleanor said. Her voice was softer, but it was a trap. You were standing right there. You saw it. Sienna looked at Valerie. Valerie's eyes were pleading, desperate. Lie for me. Save me. Then Sienna looked at the crowd. She saw the mayor. She saw her new in-laws sitting at table 4. She saw the judgment in their eyes. If she defended Valerie now, she would be defending a woman who had just punched someone in public. She would be the accomplice. Sienna looked at me. She looked at the bruise that was already forming on my arm. Sienna, Valerie shrieked. Tell her. Sienna swallowed hard. Her lip trembled. She hit her, Sienna whispered. What? Eleanor asked. Speak up, child. She hit her, Sienna shouted, tears bursting from her eyes. She always hits her. She slapped her on Christmas. She threw the book away. She hits me too if I do not do what she says. The confession hung in the air like smoke. Valerie gasped, clutching her chest as if she had been shot. Sienna, how could you? Because I am tired, Sienna sobbed, backing away from her mother. I am tired of lying for you. I am tired of being afraid you will ruin my marriage like you ruined Morgan's life. The room erupted. The exemplary mothers were whispering furiously. The mayor was signaling his aide to get him out of there. Mr. Caro stepped forward. He addressed the stunned chairwoman of the event, Mrs. Higgins, who was standing by the stage clutching her pearls. Mrs. Higgins, Mr. Caro said smoothly, as the platinum sponsor representing Hale Ventures, Ms. Eleanor Hale finds it impossible to continue funding an event that honors a documented abuser. Mrs. Higgins went pale. Mr. Caro, surely we can... However, Caro interrupted, Ms. Hale is willing to double her donation tonight, $100,000, on one condition. Anything, Mrs. Higgins breathed. The award changes, Caro said. Tonight, right now, we are not honoring Valerie Hale. We are scrubbing her name from the program. Then who are we honoring? Mrs. Higgins asked, looking around desperately. Eleanor stepped up to me. She took my hand. My hand was cold, but hers was warm. We are honoring the people who survive people like her, Eleanor said loud enough for the microphone on the stage to catch it. We are honoring the caregivers, the ones who clean up the messes, the ones who pay the bills, the ones who get hit and keep standing. She looked at Mrs. Higgins. Change the theme to The Forgotten Caregivers, and invite my granddaughter to the stage. Mrs. Higgins looked at Valerie, who was now sobbing into her hands, totally abandoned by her family, standing alone in a puddle of cheap champagne. Then she looked at Eleanor, the billionaire. It was not a hard choice. Ladies and gentlemen, Mrs. Higgins' voice trembled over the speakers. If we could please take our seats. We have a slight change to the program. She gestured to the stage. We would like to invite Ms. Morgan Hale to speak. The room went silent again. I looked at Eleanor. Go, she whispered. Fill the page. I looked at Valerie. She lifted her head. Her mascara was running. She looked small. She looked pathetic. For the first time in my life, she did not look scary. She just looked like a mean, sad woman who had lost her audience. I stepped over the broken glass. I walked past Sienna, who was weeping into a napkin. I walked past my father, who could not even lift his head. I walked up the stairs to the stage. The spotlight hit me. It was blindingly bright. I stood at the podium. I looked out at the sea of faces, 300 people waiting for the tea, waiting for the scandal. I reached into my purse. I did not pull out the black file. I did not need it. The evidence was already on the floor. I pulled out the scrapbook, the one with the tape on the spine. I placed it on the podium. I leaned into the microphone. My name is Morgan, I said. My voice shook. then steadied. And for 32 years, I thought my job was to be invisible. I paused. I looked directly at table 1, where Eleanor sat, nodding. "I was wrong," I said. "And tonight, I'm going to tell you a story about a Christmas gift that ended up in the trash, and the woman who climbed in after it to save herself." I stood at the podium, gripping the polished wood edges until my knuckles turned white. The spotlight was a physical weight, hot and blinding, erasing the faces in the crowd until they were just a blurry sea of shadows. My heart was hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs, urging me to run, to hide, to apologize for taking up space. But then, I looked down at the scrapbook resting on the slanted surface. I saw the tape holding the spine together. I saw the scars on the leather. It was broken, but it was still there. And so was I. "My name is Morgan," I said again, and this time, my voice did not shake. It projected out into the silent ballroom, clear and steady. "I am a nurse. I work the night shift. I spend 12 hours a night stopping people from bleeding out, holding the hands of strangers so they do not have to die alone, and telling families the worst news of their lives." I paused. The room was so quiet I could hear the hum of the air conditioning. "I am good at taking care of people," I continued. "I was trained to be. But my training did not start in nursing school. It started when I was a child, in a house where love was a currency that you had to earn, and the price of admission kept going up." I did not look at Valerie. I looked straight ahead. For years, I thought that if I just cooked enough meals, paid enough bills, and swallowed enough insults, I would finally be worth something. I thought that being a good daughter meant setting myself on fire to keep my family warm. I took a breath. Last Christmas, I made a gift. It was this book. I touched the cover. I spent 1 year making it. I poured my heart into it, and on Christmas Eve, a family member took it, called it trash, and threw it in the garbage can in front of everyone I knew. When I tried to retrieve it, she slapped me across the face. A gasp rippled through the room. It was a collective intake of breath, sharp and shocked. "I stood there," I said, "with my cheek burning, and I waited for someone to say something. I waited for my father to stand up. I waited for my sister to defend me, but nobody moved, because in that house, violence was just another form of communication, and my humiliation was just the price of dinner." I looked down at the front row, where Eleanor sat, her chin raised, her eyes fierce with pride. "That night, I realized something," I said. "If I disappeared, they would not miss me. They would only miss the service I provided. So, I stopped serving. When my sister got married last week, instead of working for free in the kitchen, I took the money I had saved for them and I went on a vacation. I sat by a lake, I ate a burger, and for the first time in 32 years, I spent money on myself without feeling like a thief." I leaned closer to the microphone. "I am standing here tonight because I do not want my future children to think that violence is a normal part of a family dinner. I do not want them to think that love means letting someone hurt you. I am standing here to say that I am done being a victim, and I am done being silent." I stepped back. For 2 seconds, there was absolute silence. Then, one person started clapping. It was the waiter who had dropped the tray. Then Eleanor stood up and clapped. Then Mr. Caro, and then the entire room rose. It was not polite applause. It was a roar. It was a wave of sound that washed over me, cleansing the shame that had clung to my skin for decades. I looked at Valerie. She was standing alone near the stage, her face pale, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. Nobody was looking at her. Nobody was admiring her sequins. She had become invisible. As the applause began to fade, Eleanor walked up the stairs. She did not need a microphone. She commanded the space simply by existing. She placed her hand on my shoulder, a warm, solid weight. "Thank you, Morgan," Eleanor said, her voice carrying to the back of the room. "That took courage, and courage deserves to be rewarded." She turned to the audience. "Tonight was supposed to be about exemplary mothers," Eleanor said. "But as we have seen, titles can be misleading. So, I am announcing a new initiative. The Hale Foundation is establishing the Scrapbook Fund. It will be a dedicated grant program to provide legal aid, housing deposits, and therapy for adults trying to leave abusive family systems. And the first recipient of our full support is my granddaughter, Morgan Hale. She paused, letting the words sink in. Then she turned her gaze to the corner where Greg and Valerie stood. Furthermore, Eleanor said, her voice turning to steel, I am making a public correction to the rumors regarding my estate. For years, my son Greg and his wife have operated under the assumption that they control the Hale family assets. Tonight, I am clarifying that the primary beneficiary of my trust is now Morgan Hale. Valerie let out a screech. It was a raw, guttural sound. She lunged forward, grabbing the edge of the stage. You cannot do that, she screamed, her face twisted and ugly. That is our money. That is family money. Greg is your son. You owe him. Mr. Caro stepped forward from the wings. He held up the blue folder. Actually, Mrs. Hale, he said calmly into his own lapel microphone, the assets in question are the sole property of Eleanor Hale. You are not named in any binding document. Mr. Greg Hale will receive a monthly stipend to ensure he has food and shelter, provided he has no contact with the trust's principal, but the capital, the investments, the real estate rights, they belong to the trust, and Morgan controls the veto. You are stealing from us, Valerie shrieked, turning to the crowd, looking for an ally, but finding only disgusted faces. She poisoned her. Morgan poisoned her mind. Greg, do something. Tell them. Valerie grabbed Greg's arm, shaking him violently. Tell your mother she cannot do this. Tell her. Greg Hale stood there. He looked at his wife, who was screaming like a banshee. He looked at his mother, who looked like a queen. And then he looked at me. He looked at the daughter he had watched being slapped, the daughter he had ignored, the daughter he had used as an ATM. He gently pulled his arm out of Valerie's grip. Greg? Valerie whispered, shocked. Greg took a step toward the stage. He did not come up the stairs. He stood at the bottom, looking up at me. His eyes were wet. I am sorry, Morgan, he said. His voice was hoarse, barely audible over the murmurs of the crowd, but I heard him. I am sorry. I let you be alone for too long. I was a coward. It was not enough. It did not erase the years of neglect. It did not pay back the money, but it was the truth. And in that moment, I saw the foundation of my parents' marriage, the shared delusion of power, crack and crumble into dust. I am going home, Valerie, Greg said. He turned and walked away, heading for the exit. His shoulders slumped. Valerie stood there, isolated in the center of the ballroom. She looked at the crowd, realizing with dawning horror that she had lost. She had lost the money. She had lost her husband. She had lost her reputation. And she had lost her victim. She let out a sob, covered her face with her hands, and ran out the side door, her silver sequins flashing one last time before vanishing into the darkness. The rest of the evening was a blur of handshakes and tearful confessions. Women I did not know came up to me to whisper their own stories of toxic mothers and controlling fathers. The waiter I had defended brought me a fresh glass of sparkling water and thanked me. As the event wound down, I walked toward the exit. My feet hurt, but my spirit felt like it was floating. Morgan? I turned. Sienna was standing near the coat check. Her eyes were red and puffy. She was holding her wrap like a security blanket. She started, then stopped. She looked down at her shoes. I am sorry. For the wedding. For the texts. For everything. I looked at my sister. I remembered the little girl I used to read to. I also remembered the woman who had called me a narcissist 2 hours ago. Thank you, I said. I was scared, Sienna whispered. When I saw her hit you, I saw myself. I realized that if I ever stopped being perfect, if I ever stopped doing what she wanted, she would turn on me too. And now that you are gone, and Dad is broken, I am the only one left. She is going to come for me. She looked at me with pleading eyes. She wanted me to fix it. She wanted me to say, move in with me, or I will protect you." "But Doctor," Ford's voice echoed in my head, "you cannot save someone who is not ready to save themselves." "She probably will," I said gently. Sienna flinched. "So what do I do? Can we talk? Can you help me?" I stepped back. I did not hug her. "If you want to change, Sienna, you have to do it for yourself," I said. "Not to apologize to me, not to escape her, but because you want to be a decent person. Here." I reached into my purse and pulled out a business card Dr. Ford had given me. "This is my therapist," I said. "She is excellent. Call her. Make an appointment. Do the work. If you do that, maybe one day we can be sisters again. But right now, I cannot be your shield. I am retired from saving this family." Sienna took the card. Her hand was shaking. She looked at me with a mixture of fear and respect. "Okay," she whispered. "Goodbye, Morgan." "Goodbye, Sienna." I walked out through the double doors. The cold night air hit my face, crisp and clean. The black limousine was waiting at the curb, engine idling. The driver opened the door. Eleanor was already inside, sipping a cup of herbal tea from a thermos. But she was not alone. Sitting across from her was a woman in a sharp navy suit. "Morgan," Eleanor said as I slid onto the leather seat. "This is Dr. Alana Sterling. She runs the Medical Benevolence Society." "Ms. Hale," Dr. Sterling said, extending a hand. "Your grandmother told me your story, and I just heard your speech. It was powerful." "Thank you," I said, shaking her hand. "We have been looking for someone to spearhead a new initiative," Dr. Sterling said. "A support network specifically for healthcare professionals dealing with domestic trauma. We find that nurses and doctors often have the hardest time setting boundaries because their job is to care. We need a program director, someone who has lived it, someone who can build the curriculum." I looked at Eleanor. She was smiling over the rim of her cup. "It is fully funded by the Scrapbook Fund," Eleanor said. "You would have your own office, your own staff, and you would be helping people save themselves, instead of just patching them up after the damage is done." "It is a job?" I asked. "It is a career," Dr. Sterling corrected, "and it pays significantly more than the night shift." I sat back against the seat. A job, a trust fund, a purpose. "I would like that," I said. "I would like that very much." "Good," Eleanor said. She tapped the partition. "Driver, take us home. And by home, I mean drop me at the estate, and then take Ms. Hale wherever she wants to go." The limo pulled away from the curb. I watched the Grand Meridian disappear in the rearview mirror. I watched the lights of the hotel fade, taking with them the memory of Valerie's screaming face and the sound of broken glass. I opened my bag. I pulled out the scrapbook. I turned to the very last page, the one I had pasted the blank white sheet over. I took a Polaroid camera out of my purse, a silly thing I had bought for the trip to Sterling Bay, and handed it to Eleanor. "Take a picture?" I asked. Eleanor smiled. She raised the camera. I smiled. It was not a polite smile. It was a real one. Click. The photo whirred out. I waited for it to develop. It showed me sitting in the back of a limo, wearing a green silk dress, with a bruise on my arm but a fire in my eyes. Beside me, blurry but distinct, was the profile of my grandmother. I took a glue stick from my bag and pasted the photo onto the final page. I took my pen and wrote under it. The first page of the life I did not ask anyone for permission to live. I closed the book. I rested my hand on the cover. The limo glided through the streets of Evermont, smooth and silent. I did not know if my father would ever truly leave my mother. I did not know if Sienna would make that therapy appointment. I did not know if Valerie would spend the rest of her life playing the victim to anyone who would listen. But as I looked out the window at the city lights blurring by, I knew one thing for absolute certain. The next time I gave a gift, it would be to someone who cherished it. And if anyone ever tried to throw my life in the trash again, they would find that I was no longer the thing being discarded. I was the fire that burned the trash can down. I leaned my head back and watched the world go by. Finally free. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I would love to know where you are tuning in from, so please leave a comment below sharing your location and your thoughts on Morgan's journey. If you enjoyed this story, please consider subscribing to the Lila Revenge Stories channel, liking this video, and hitting the hype button so that this story can be heard by even more people.